Masithandaze. Almighty God, where you have called us to govern this province, we ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interest of our people. Ons maak God ons bied dat u gedrend ons vergaderings. Ons dien dege wysheid gee en ons motieve saver salo. And that u ons sal help ons te kot komenge te orko. En al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikelela Nkosi ilizwe lethu nabantu bayo. Umisele Nkosi ukulunga kwiphondo lethu. Nkosi sikelela eAfrika. Gcina abantwana bayo. Kokhela Nkosi inkokheli zayo. Inike uxolo Nkosi eAfrika. All this we beg in your most holy name. Amen. You may all be seated. Honorable members, let me appreciate the presence in the chamber of the Honorable, the Premier of the Western Cape, our beautiful province, and of course, the Honorable Ministers that are present here, Minister Simars, Minister Murray, the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition that is here with us in the chamber. We appreciate your presence here because myself and the Deputy Speaker, we are here permanently in the chamber. So it feels good to have you around. Let me appreciate and acknowledge the presence of the honorable members who are connected virtually. And of course, welcome you all here. Our guests, the members of the Fourth Estate, who are of course part of us. You are now members of the family. I'm just going to set some ground rules, the rules in terms of the sitting, the do's and don'ts in terms of our hybrid session, and just to request the members of the media not to activate the microphone, also not to activate the camera. You are in the chamber, so you are in the gallery rather, and that is where we expect you to be in terms of the sitting. I also wish to request the honorable members that we do not activate cameras just to keep stability of the platform, except when you do indeed speak or recognize to do so. And also keep your camera, your microphone muted. If you so wish to speak, you indicate by a show of hand or you indicate in the chat room, but do not speak unrecognized because it causes chaos in the system. I just want to, at this stage, also say to the people of the Western Cape and all of those who are watching this session, welcome and thank you for your interest. Honorable members, our order in terms of the business today is as it appears in the order paper. I wish to recognize the Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon. Notwithstanding the provisions of Rule 20, I move that the debate be given precedence.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion? No objections. Are there any objections to the motion being moved? No motion, no objections. I think it's clear that the honorable members are happy with you, Madam Chief Whip. In terms of the subject of discussion, It is led by the Honorable Bosman, as printed in the order paper. I just wish to request the honorable members, if I say that your time is up, that means you have concluded your speaking time. I'm not going to forewarn you before you finish, because it disrupts the speaking opportunity for the members.
Appreciative of your answer. We are glad to hear that the department.
No, say early for May I request that we mute everyone IT, so that, because members sometimes they are connecting, forgetting that they are in the house. I now recognize the Honorable Bosman.
Good afternoon, Honourable Speaker and colleagues in the House and online. Speaker, at a time when our country faces its biggest challenge since apartheid, we see more and more people struggling to manage under the difficulties caused by poor management of our national economy. An alarming expanded unemployment rate and a hostile government in Pretoria is to blame for this. This has culminated in South Africa holding the highest global unemployment rate, with the ANC at the helm. The opposition in green and yellow must not tell us today how much they care. Their very own staff at Luthuli House and across the country are striking right now for fair pay and working conditions. Die ANC gee nie om nie. Hulle eie huis is aan die brand, maar hulle kan niks doen nie. From the union buildings, we see a government that does not view its role as helping citizens, but it places them under the most illogical and hardest lockdowns we've seen globally. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen a rapidly increasing number of our residents reaching out to the Western Cape government to find assistance to support their well-being needs. The mental and social well-being of our communities have suffered tremendously, and the ability for all of our residents to thrive and succeed has been severely impacted by their inability to find work and provide for their families. Speaker, people have the right to engage in meaningful work that enables them to provide for their families. This right was taken away when the ANC discriminated against broad sectors of society, choosing winners and losers to survive during their mismanagement of our economy. Meanwhile, the Western Cape is the only province with a dedicated ad hoc committee on COVID-19 and the only provincial legislature to have reached out to residents to ask them about their experiences during this crushing pandemic. We've listened, we've felt, we've empathized, but the ANC in Pretoria continues to destroy. The residents have told us how difficult they've had it. They've shared with us the deteriorating mental health status, and some respondents have indicated that they were so close to taking their own lives. The closure of the hospitality industry, the entertainment industry, as well as the liquor industry has meant that many of our residents did not have the option to work. They were instead forced to rely on community feeding schemes, generous neighbours, and the support that this DA administration provided them. Now more than ever, Speaker, residents need dignified opportunities that put them in charge of their own lives and their own well-being. The right to dignity is constantly being denied by our incompetent ANC national government. This constitutional right is being trampled on by a government hell-bent on making our people addicted to state funding through a meager 350 grant. Yet the ANC actually has told people that they can start a business with this grant. What an insult. Speaker, dignity entails that people be allowed the opportunity to realize their humanity to the fullest extent, that they have the freedom and the opportunity to support themselves in whatever meaningful work they choose to do. This is surely not the situation that the ANC government has created. Over the last 8 months, I've been helping Ms. Roman, a resident struggling to apply for her SASSA grant. She has spent many cold nights sleeping outside of the SASSA offices in Bellville in order to get assistance from this social assistance agency, but they have failed her. She's one of the many residents we have assisted, whether it is engaging with the Unemployment Insurance Fund or trying to get SASSA to do its job. Speaker, we need to do more to create opportunities to ensure that the citizens are content and that we are playing our part, but we really need our national government to join us. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Bosman. You are well within your time, and I appreciate that. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Bagubagu Force.
Thank you, Speaker.
Ungaqhuba Mhlonishwa.
Speaker,
Honorable Member Bagubagu Force.
sorry. Speaker, I'm responding to the topic before us today. Allow me to quote Associate Professor Maylin Shang King of UCT School of Public Health, who said, open quote, sorry about that. Shocks such as climate change and COVID-19 also tend to intensify existing inequalities for a privileged few. The pandemic simply meant a change in lifestyle, but for the majority of South Africans, the pandemic has been catastrophic, with families facing unemployment, hunger, violence, and uncertain future. Close quote. The debate comes at a time when the country unemployment rate rose to the highest rate ever at 34.4% in the second quarter from the 32.6% in the previous quarter. The expanded unemployment rose to 44.4%. The official unemployment rate increased by 2.1% to 25.8% in Q2 2021 compared to Q1 2021. This will result in significant increase in anxiety and depression. The global outbreak of COVID-19 leads to unbearable psychological impact on the mental health of the individuals, including through hunger and joblessness, the loss of identity, loved ones, and one's purpose. There is ample evidence to demonstrate the negative impact of COVID-19 on mental health, well-being, and wellness of people, Speaker. Yet this government did not deem it necessary to have targeted mental health support programs for the general public, particularly the survivors of the virus, those that have lost loved ones, and those that have lost jobs. COVID-19 has led a lot of permanent emotional scars on lives of patients who witnessed death in our hospitals. As a survivor of this virus who spent time in hospital, I have first-hand experience of this traumatic experience. I wish to commend the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Government for its initiative to offer an entire mental health toolkit to respond to psychological distress in population. We have reached that stage where in our neighborhoods we know of families that lost loved ones to this virus, include child-headed households as a result of COVID-19. I am not sure if the provincial government has through of conducting research on the number of child-headed households that have emerged as a result of COVID-19. If not, then the Premier should consider embarking on this research and set aside funds to support the child-headed household. The Children's Institute at UCT, in collaboration with the Children's Hospital Trust and the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, are calling for government to put children in the heart of South Africa's COVID-19 response and recovery plans. According to their advocacy briefs, while children accounted for only 4% of cases in the province and 0.5% of the deaths, Thousands more children have been affected by the illness and death of family members. While the Western Cape Recovery Plan recognizes that the issue of food security is prominent in the well-being priority, this is not followed up with viable and sustainable interventions. The proposed food relief through resourcing of community kitchen, partnership with NGOs, spaza shop food voucher schemes, and food parcel delivery for beneficiaries in remote areas is not sustainable and will not reach out to all those who are in need. The ANC on record calling on the provincial government to intensify the rollout of the community school and household food gardens so that every community and every household could have a food garden. The impact of violent crimes and the GBV pandemic continue to cause shock and psychological distress to the population. The provincial government has failed dismally in addressing these challenges. In working towards a prosperous future, as Member Bosman suggests in the subject for the debate, the provincial government should look at addressing the challenge I have highlighted above.
Enkosi kakhulu Mhlonishwa.
Enkosi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Bagu first. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Taiko. Ole.
Thank you, Somlo. The topic for the present debate coincides with the unemployment quarterly force statistics, which were released recently by Statistics South Africa. It is without doubt that the issue of unemployment has been a recurring feature within South Africa for years and now have reached high levels as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. The topic at issue in essence goes to the effect of asking a question on how residents in the province can be assisted to deal with the mental health issues caused by a disturbance in their ability to sustain themselves financially. As the EFF, it is our stance that our people do not need handouts from government and short-term unemployment opportunities so as they can make their ends meet. Our people do not have to make ends meet in actual fact. What they need is to be economically empowered through legislation and correct policies, so as they can self-sustain without relying on any white employment. It has always been our position as the EFF that the equal redistribution of land and other public resources remain key in addressing the structural unemployment crisis which our country and this province face. The only way real job opportunities can be created is when all share the wealth of this country meaningfully without greed and hate and racism. It cannot be that all the wealth remains in the hands of the few white people and the majority of the people are being asked to beg for jobs from the few. That will never work and will always be unsustainable. So the sooner the poor and the working class are empowered meaningfully by getting a stake in the resources and minerals of this country, talk of unemployment and making ends meet will be a thing of the past. Thank you very much, Somlom.
Thank you, Honorable Taiko. I see that you also finished within your time, and thank you for that. Honorable Minister Fernandez is now the next speaker. I recognize you, Honorable Minister.
Good afternoon, Honorable Speaker. Am I audible?
Yes, you are loud and clear, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Premier, Honorable Members. We are convening today to debate the pressures of COVID-19 on the mental well-being and wellness of South Africans. A recent research paper published in February 2021 states that the COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting economic recession have negatively affected many people's mental health and created new barriers for people already suffering from mental illness and substance use disorders. A KFF health tracking poll from July 2020 also found that many adults are reporting specific negative impacts on their mental health and well-being, such as difficulty sleeping or eating, increases in alcohol consumption or substance use, and worsening chronic conditions due to worry and stress over the coronavirus. The mental and psychological distress experienced during the COVID pandemic has increased, with many people dealing with the loss of a family member, colleague, or close friend or community member. We meet at a time when poverty and unemployment have reached unprecedented levels, which has been exacerbated by a protracted hard lockdown. Many citizens are experiencing grief, loss, and trauma. Many citizens have lost not only jobs, informal sources of income, but their homes and assets in an effort to sustain lives and livelihoods. According to a study by the Human Science Research Council conducted in 2020, 33% of South Africans were depressed, while 45% were fearful and 29% were experiencing loneliness. Different lockdown levels often limited access to essential services, including mental health care. Honourable Speaker, COVID-19 has indeed disrupted all spheres of society. However, the poor, the vulnerable, and the marginalized living on the brink are the most affected by the socio-economic realities, such as poverty, increasing unemployment, inequality, gender-based violence, and homelessness, amongst others. The emotional strain, anxiety, and distress this pandemic has placed on educators and learners must not be underestimated. A recent UNICEF study in July 2021 states that school children lost about 54% of learning time, and 400 to 500,000 learners have dropped out of school since March 2020. This is a dire situation that will not be resolved in the short term. Honourable Speaker, every honourable member in this House today knows or knows someone who is struggling emotionally during this pandemic. Some of us on this very platform have been affected adversely ourselves. Mental health and well-being affects us all. The COVID-19 pandemic has presented a unique set of psychological challenges for all citizens, ranging from anxiety, stress, grief, despair, and a sense of hopelessness. And as a government, we have realized the need to address the issue of mental health and well-being. Honourable Speaker, more than 70,000 Western Cape residents accessed psychosocial support services from DSD between April 2020 and January 2021. The support provided includes, amongst others, debriefing, counselling, trauma-informed care, and psychotherapy. In order to mitigate the challenges of accessing services, we had to redesign our way of work to ensure that psychosocial support is available telephonically to assist those who desperately need it. Honourable Speaker, our ability to reach every corner of this province would not be possible without the support of many other stakeholders. In this regard, I wish to extend my gratitude for the support provided by our religious leaders, frontline workers, essential services, SAPS, academia, and civil society. More so, I wish to thank every citizen in this province that stepped into the gap to help and support their fellow citizens. Honourable Speaker, the emotional and psychological well-being of employees is paramount. In many instances, they too have to deal with losing loved ones, close associates, and colleagues. The social sector and many social service professionals continue to deliver essential services to children, families, and the communities that they serve and with whom they have built a close, caring relationship. However, they too have to stay safe, as self-care is paramount. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Honourable Speaker, it would be remiss of me not to point out the national government's role in fueling the emotional turbulence of the already vulnerable South Africans over the past 518 days. SASSA and the National Department of Social Development's clients are at their wits' end because of the delays, miscommunication, and unresponsiveness in dealing with a fast unfolding humanitarian crisis. The levels of anxiety and distress experienced by those applying for social relief of distress grants has reached unprecedented levels. They wait in desperation to receive the financial relief promised to them. More than 5 million people applied and the system crashed, yet we have not received any communication. These are individuals, Honourable Speaker, who are already struggling, who have no idea where the next meal will be coming from and who will be providing it. For the ECD workers who did not earn an income as a result of the Disaster Management Act regulation, forcing them to close ECDs for a protracted period, for them, Honourable Speaker, talk is cheap as they await the stimulus relief package, which was announced in October last year. We are doing our best to assist with the payments of the Stimulus Relief Fund. However, many ECDs have not received any form of assistance because of the inefficient verification process designed by an inept and dysfunctional national government. Honourable Speaker, the Western Cape Government is working transversely and collaborating with all spheres of government and stakeholders to address the psychosocial impact of the pandemic on citizens of this province. We are taking action to alleviate the hardship of our residents, particularly the vulnerable, during this difficult time. We have an established wellbeing work group. We have a provincial faith-based forum. We have a food forum, a gender-based violence forum, and a recently established homelessness street people's forum, which is making good progress. Collaboration across spheres of government is critical to ensuring an integrated, holistic approach to the many challenges I alluded to. To this end, Honourable Speaker, I have scheduled fortnightly meetings with SASSA to address the ongoing challenges many citizens face on a daily basis, not only in this province, but across South Africa.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. You have exhausted your time.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. If I may, just my last sentence, I'm pleased to announce that the Minister, Marais, is as leading a forum of mental health forum, which will focus on the mental health and wellness of our citizens and staff. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I thought I must give you that, but my request to the honourable members, because some you don't finish your time, but it's fine when you don't conclude your time. But if the honourable member can time themselves, so that I don't have to warn you before you finish off. I know it can be quite uncomfortable, but we are here to work together. So I just wish to request that we do so. Now the next speaker, honourable members, is Honourable Heron.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, it's quite disappointing to hear the Minister for Social Development speak as if the subject matter of this debate is someone else's business, when it is the Social Development Department that is mandated to ensure the provision of a comprehensive social development service that enables and empowers the poor, the vulnerable, and those with special needs. These services are important to protect and repair our social fabric, and especially ensure that those residents who are vulnerable, excluded, and most in need of social assistance are in fact assisted. The failure of the Department of Social Development, the Western Cape Department, to deliver facilities and services greatly contributes towards the increasing number of people in need of social support. Transitional housing for the homeless is one of the most important needs in this city and province right now. It is the start of the social support needed to assist the growing number of homeless people who live in appalling and dangerous conditions on our streets. In Cape Town alone, there are estimated to be 14,000 people living on the streets. The factors contributing to this growing number are very well known. The provision of adequate facilities and appropriate programs is essential to addressing their pathway off the street, and it is this minister's department's responsibility. But this government has outsourced their responsibility. Last year, the minister allocated 12 million rand for homeless shelters, the majority of it going to the Haven. Speaker, this Parliament can debate the impact of COVID-19, but this government has the mandate, the duty, and the funding to actually do something about it. The extent of starvation and hunger in our province is a disgrace. A month ago in KTC in Nyanga, I met families in crisis. I met a young man who is so hungry that he is slaughtering cats and dogs to eat. These are the conditions that this government must address. Instead of standing by while food monies are stolen by your colleagues in the city of Cape Town, do the right thing, intervene, roll out a massive hunger alleviation program and feed the hungry at the very least. Speaker, they found 1.3 billion rand for a fake policing project. I urge this government to focus on the basic mandate, feed the hungry and house the homeless.
Thank you, Honorable Heron. I appreciate your contribution. Now, honorable members, we move to the next speaker, the Honorable Christian.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you for the opportunity. Speaker, I believe this is a time where we as politicians and different political parties should unite and build and come together and say, how can we assist and grow this province? This cannot be a blame game. We cannot blame one another. We need to take responsibility because we're sitting with depressing unemployment numbers, decreasing quality for life, the inability to serve. People cannot even service their debt, and people are anxious, and that even adds to people staying away from work, people not healthy, people really breaking down in this pandemic. When people hear that politicians come and play the blame game, they get despondent. What we need to do is give practical solutions, how to get out of this pandemic and how to help our people. So as a province, we must unite, we must grow, we must build this beautiful province that we have. Many communities are already playing supportive roles when it comes to grief, when it comes to poverty. And we saw communities stepping up and helping their neighbors, helping their brothers and sisters. So that is the kind of message we must send. Government cannot do it all. We need to engage our communities, engage one another and see how we can move forward. I want to salute the people of the Western Cape. I want to salute the people of this country that step forward to assist the most vulnerable. Speaker, families are emotionally scarred for life through untimely deaths of their mothers, of their fathers and brothers. People are going through a difficult time. Just today I heard when a family were preparing for a funeral, they lost another sister on the very same day. I thank you, Deputy. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Christians, for your contribution. I now recognize the Honorable Member Philander.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Today, COVID-19 infections led to the loss of over 17,700 lives in our province, from over 470,000 confirmed positive cases, and deaths equate to 3.6% of the confirmed cases. Though COVID-related deaths are considered the worst-case scenario, it does not end with our final goodbyes at the graves of our loved ones. It means that close to 500,000 residents, their families and friends could not continue with life as we know it. Jobs, fulfilling basic needs, participating in recreational activities that support our lifestyles and well-being. Nothing is left unaffected. A new world was not only to be imagined, but unraveled and lived rapidly. And so we were deprived of many of our coping mechanisms. Speaker, in the corridors of hospitals, healthcare workers had to reduce the spread as a first point of call, develop short-term strategies and bear in mind long-term plans, provide care to this never-before-seen virus, delay the fears of patients and that of their own. Many were left without support of loved ones as isolation and quarantine became common practice. The conditions of a healthcare worker received heightened attention, evident in their new name, the essential worker. Speaker, I salute every nurse, practice manager, doctor, porter, administrator. You have lost and learned, but pushed through the unknown. You are deeply appreciated for your heroism. Speaker, in contrast, the lack of constructive criticism by the opposition, I commend the provincial government for the support provided to these essential workers. The employment of additional staff during each wave of this infection. We saw the launch of the Red Dot taxi service, which offered dedicated safe transportation services to workers, and now have offered over 5,000 passengers the opportunity to get to vaccination sites. Made sure we
Don't you
purpose
think
hospitals
that's more
and
important to be united? Now they fight with one another and criticize.
Speaker.
Yes.
I don't think order, honorable members. My apologies, Honorable Philander, if you could allow me. I just want to address the honorable member who switched on the microphone. We don't do that. We don't do that. It's against the standing rules. It violates the very tenet that binds us here, that we are honorable members. So we cannot allow that. I'm requesting that we proceed, and Honorable Member Philander, you have not lost your time. Please proceed.
Thank you so much, Speaker. And made sure that we repurpose hospitals and manage bed capacity innovatively through the bed bureau system and dedicated field hospitals to ease the system under which staff operate. Over and above all, I commend the Provincial Department of Health for embarking on an intentional healing process with one-on-one consultations for those who have suffered psychologically. Speaker, these efforts have made possible by tabling a budget of hope for 2021, one to create jobs, safer communities, and deliver well-being. As Minister Mania said earlier this year, national government gives with one hand and takes with the other. While we supported every wave of COVID-19 by 1 billion rand, national government effectively cut the Provincial Department of Health budget by 1.85 billion. But during this time, we were able to lean in to help buffer reductions to basic programs in human settlements, education, and health with over 9 billion over the medium term. In this way, we rebuild on ANC-sponsored ruins and we look to a better future. Speaker, I cannot stress enough the importance of supplementing support programs of frontline service departments, given the toll COVID-19 takes on those in need. The impact of the pandemic is visible everywhere, but what it has done to the mental health and residents' well-being cannot be seen with a mere eye. It is therefore important that we continue to embark intentionally on these recovery plans. We do this with or without national government, and we do this in the interest of those who have passed, those who are suffering in silence, and for those still with us. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Philander. Honorable members, I now recognize the Honorable Member Van Vogel.
Good afternoon, Speaker and honorable members. Speaker, it's been over a year since COVID-19 visited our country and province. Since then, life as we know it changed drastically and will never be the same again. I want to commend President Ramaphosa and national government for the efforts to save life and to preserve livelihoods. We thank the President for extending the 350 grants to the unemployed young people. The impact of this is known to all. Cyril Gavin, a young man van Swellendam, sê Auntie Rachel, as u die president sien, sê vir hom dankie vir die 350 rand, want ek is 'n enkel ouer met 2 kinders sonder 'n inkomste, maar ek kan vandag 'n stukkie brood op hulle tafel sit. He ended up by saying, even though our country faces a lot of challenges currently, I have a lot to be grateful. And I will pray for him and our government to keep up with the good work. Speaker, The rise of this virus has caused panic and psychological distress in the population, as everyone is living in fear of contracting the virus or losing loved ones. As the Western Cape remains in the top 2 provinces with the highest COVID-19 infections, the situations remain volatile and the fear remain high in communities. The government is not doing enough to protect the population and minimize the spread of the virus. While we may shift the blame to COVID-19 fatigue and many other excuses we have heard in the past, reality is that the provincial government has not done enough to prevent the rapid spread of virus in the province, and we have failed to protect the healthcare workers who are in the cold face of our response to the pandemic. The psychological toll the pandemic has taken on frontline workers is not spoken about enough. The frontline workers put their life in danger so we could live. They live in the shadow of death and have lost a lot of their colleagues in the past 2 years. The psychological and psychological harm of COVID-19 on healthcare workers is well established and easy to see. They put in long hours of work in often unsafe environment. They experience burnout and have witnessed colleagues contracting the virus and succumbing to it. Speaker Professor Kurt Stevens, a clinical psychologist at Wits, stated that healthcare workers are first and foremost human beings, and directly due to COVID-19, they are like other humans struggling with mental issues in this moment. Speaker, we need to advocate for more assistance for the healthcare workers. The provincial government must employ additional healthcare workers to address the challenge of burnout and to allow workers time to isolate or to be able to leave of absence when they cannot cope mentally and emotionally. Moreover, we need the provincial government to put in more resources towards the emotional and mental well-being of our frontline workers. Speaker, the South African Depression and Anxiety Group conducted a survey last year which showed that stress levels had increased during COVID-19 as people experienced anxiety and panic and financial pressure. I don't want us to fall into a trap of believing that the provincial mental health challenge only started with the emergence of COVID-19. We have always had a serious mental health challenge in the province. To see the proof of this, we need to look no further than service pressure and shortages of beds in our psychiatric hospitals. The unemployment rate, particularly among youth, and the need rate has pushed many young people to drugs and substance abuse. This in turn has contributed immensely to the challenges with mental health and increased numbers of patients in our psychiatric hospitals. The Western Cape Recovery Plan does not have specific programs to deal with these present challenges. The Department of Health has also failed to ensure that all our district hospitals have dedicated mental health units. Speaker, the psychological toll of COVID-19 on children is not receiving the necessary attention it deserves. The government has not done enough to find best possible ways to communicate the impact of COVID-19 to children. For instance, what programs are in place to support children when their caregivers are hospitalized or have succumbed to COVID-19? What methods are used to communicate outbreak of COVID-19 in schools and when a teacher or learner has succumbed to death? This brings me to the point that we have been raising in the province as ANC, given the impact of COVID-19 on the emotional and mental well-being of the population, frontline workers and teachers and learners. Does the provincial not see the need to employ more social workers and psychologists in schools? At the present moment, there is only one per education district. One can imagine the emotional strain they are going through due to work pressure. The provincial government, particularly the Department of Health, Social Development and Education, must find ways to ensure that we put resources in place to ensure that there is social workers or psychologists for every school in the province. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Van Vachen. I said thank you a minute before you finish. I'm glad you finished on time. Thank you. May I, at this stage, honorable members, request the Honorable Minister of Cultural Affairs and Sport, Honorable Marais, to address the House.
Speaker, this Western Cape government understands that the COVID-19 pandemic had and continues to have an impact on the physical and mental well-being of our citizens, as well as officials across the province. It is for this reason that the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport has taken the lead to advise on programs that could be rolled out to offer long-term healing and counseling support to the citizenry, both formal and informal. We are living amid the first global mass trauma event for several decades. It's arguably the first of its kind since World War II, and like the first of such severity in our lifetime, billions of people have had to contend with loneliness, anxiety, boredom, and grief during the triple crisis of a global pandemic, a brutal economic downturn, and a profound social and cultural dislocation. After the pandemic ends, the effects of the mass trauma that it has inflicted will linger across society for years. The challenge then is overburdened psychiatric and special services to respond to this large-scale trauma. The World Health Organization reminds that mental health conditions are increasing worldwide. Mainly because of demographic changes, there has been a 13% rise in mental health conditions and substance use disorders in the last decade. Around 20% of the world's children and adolescents have a mental health condition, with suicide the second leading cause of death amongst 15 to 29 years old. The World Health Organization explains that two of the most common mental health conditions, depression and anxiety, cost the global economy $1 trillion each year. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development reports that the uncertainties and broad impacts of COVID-19 have not affected all people to the same degree. Young people were 30% to 80% more likely to report symptoms of depression or anxiety than adults in Belgium, France, and the United States in March 2021. Higher levels of loneliness are also being reported by young people. To respond to this evidence, we should spend some time on the impact of recreation and sport on mental well-being. Studies suggest that sport achieves a number of impacts simultaneously, making it a highly cost-effective intervention. Many of the links between sport and different social impacts are common, including greater physical competence, better cognitive skills, better social skills, trust and connectedness, and identification with social values. These help to counteract risk factors and stimulate favorable reaction to protective factors. Speaker, well-being is the manifestation of the catalytic role that sport plays in stimulating social impacts. Without a sense of well-being from participating, people would not sign up to sport, people would not play as frequently as they do, and the Olympic and Paralympic Games null and void. On a lighter note, Exhibit A would be our premier. Without a sense of well-being from participating in sport, it would not be of the view that cycling fixes many a problem. There is evidence of a positive relationship between sport participation and subjective well-being. While well-being is connected particularly to health, particularly mental health, but also antisocial behavior, the education and social capital. On the flip side of the same coin, we have also explored the impact of the arts and culture on mental well-being. The evidence of beneficial effects of the arts on mental health appears to be stronger than the evidence on physical health. Kilroy et al. Demonstrated that engagement with the arts creates a positive atmosphere, empowering individuals to make healthier choices through becoming more inspired, involved, questioning, and willing to take risks. Results suggest that arts-related participation contributes to personal development and perception of well-being, which in turn builds inherent capacity and motivation for change. The current Western Cape government practices includes awareness raising, staff services, toolkit and training for community rollout, psychosocial and social work services, medical services, and referral pathways. The DCAS action plan to respond to these practices includes, which already is well on its way, consulting relevant government partners, civil society and business through implementation strategies that include nudges and tweaks to build on successes we have had Projects and events and interventions were focused on collective approaches and not only individual self-care. In keeping hope alive, while creating a social movement for healing to safely move forward together, we have focused our energies on staff well-being, advocacy, campaigns, creating new narratives and meaning, and training our teams in delivering our services, programs, and assistance on the ground to the citizens in our care. Speaker, the DCAS has the social infrastructure in place through our service delivery footprint and valued partners. The time is now to leverage on existing campaigns by icons, leaders, and influencers, inclusive our local artists, sporting personalities, and all those who call the Western Cape home. Creating new narratives and meaning through a whole of society and whole of government approach is key to addressing the lasting social dangers of mass trauma, as evidence shows it consists in forgetting. Speaker, when it goes unprocessed, undiscussed, perhaps actively repressed, a group's social tissues remain disturbed and unhealed. Individual trauma builds up unrecognized and festers under the cracks. We are tackling this head on by stimulating public dialogue and creating positive narratives through new works of art, theatre, music, dance, the visual arts, storytelling, our network of faith-based organizations and NGOs, and activations that keep hope alive while creating a social movement for healing to safely move forward together. As we actively contribute to the Western Cape Government Recovery Plan, our well-being priority based on a theory of change is focused on firstly, increasing well-being, physical, emotional and spiritual, nutrition, exercise and social support across all ages. Secondly,
thank you, Honourable Minister. Your
yet simultaneously,
your time is up.
Okay, I'm just thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. It's over 6 minutes. You have 6 minutes allocated. And thank you, Honourable Minister. I now recognize the Honourable Member Brencase.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, the COVID-19 is not only posing threats to people's physical health, but also has a negative impact on our economies, social relationships, cultural activities, of which all impacted on the mental health of people. We know that the pandemic is also harming the social and material well-being of the poor, especially children, the homeless and elderly. Closures of schools and social distancing have increased the risk of poor nutrition. Homelessness on its own increased poor mental health, and the delay in housing only exhibit existing mental health conditions. Poor mental health can make it harder to cope with being homeless, unemployed, living in abject poverty, high levels of crime and drug addictions. As a provincial government, we must ensure the implementation of measures for children to have access to good nutrition, that they are protected against child abuse and neglect, that the places of safety for abused women do not have to turn away those in need. Can we really account for the condition of the frail and elderly, whether those in need of mental and physical health could access such services? The pandemic will be with us for a long time, and many more people will be losing their jobs or starting earning less. By now, we should have developed policies to support parental employment, which is a major factor in preventing poverty. Provincial legislature and municipalities are at the front line of the crisis management of COVID-19 at all levels, such as health, economic safety, social and fiscal. In poor areas, masks are not a priority. We have seen people being evicted from their homes without alternative accommodation arrangements. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you. I noticed that sometimes the honourable members, they think that I'm saying you must finish off. I decided right from the onset to indicate to the honourable members that I don't want to disrupt the speaking opportunity for the member by informing you during the speaking because it's a hybrid session. So you might think someone is heckling, but I'm saying you must finish off. So I instead elected to rather inform you when your time is up. So my request, really, my humble request, is to set your own timer for yourself so that you don't have a situation where there is a conflict at the end of the speaking time. So at this point, so the Premier says it's going to be a timer for the leader of the opposition. Whether you trust that or not, I will leave it to you. Honorable members, oh, you've got your timer there. Well done, Honorable Dagmo. Thank you. Honorable members, I now recognize the leader of the opposition.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. I believe that it is important to echo the sentiments of Honourable Vin Voorgel that our province's mental health challenges did not start with the emergence of COVID-19. We have always had serious mental health challenges in the province, and to see the proof of this, we need to look no further than service pressures and shortages of beds in our psychiatric hospitals. However, the ANC wishes in particular during this debate to pay tribute to the civil society and NGOs who attempted to fill the gap where this provincial government has not been able to cover all the bases. We know that since 2009, there has been a systemic downscaling of the support given to civil society organizations, especially those that actually deal with mental health issues. And we as the ANC want to take this opportunity to pay tribute to organizations like Lifeline and places such as the Counselling Hub. I'm informed, Speaker, that one can access a session at the Counselling Hub for as little as 50 Rand. Speaker, personally, I think it was important for Honourable Bosman to bring this matter for debate. It's just a pity that he could not resist playing party politics. We must emphasize that mental health is as important, as the MEC said, as physical health. And therefore, if we are to build our human capabilities and human capital in this province, in order to meet the requisites of a developmental state, then issues such as mental health become imperative. It's not good enough to have a wellness for all strategy that only focuses on staff members in this provincial government. The wellness for all strategy needs to go into the community as a whole. We have to encourage our older folk, young people and others to speak to someone, even a friend, someone that you know, because we all know that we live in a deeply traumatic society. So it's about finding support mechanisms. Who of us can forget the terrible photo of a little girl sitting in the street reading a book while a body of someone who had been shot lay just a few feet away, and she continued reading. Because of apartheid and because of poverty, inequality, and gross unemployment, we live in this traumatized society, and we must be careful of making this into a political football. But I would be failing in my duty as leader of the opposition if I were not to point out the devastating effects on mental health caused by alcohol abuse in this province. We would be failing if we did not recognize the deep psychological pains which our fathers attempt to numb by drinking themselves into a stupor. In many cases, we would be failing if we did not acknowledge that some of our mothers who abuse alcohol because of being exploited, abused, or even raped. That is the reality. As leaders of society, we must encourage our people that abuse of alcohol is not the answer. And that is why, Speaker, we find it completely hypocritical that the MEC stands up here and talks about care for the homeless when she was absolutely silent when the concentration camp in Strandfontein was set up. This provincial government, up to the Premier, to the MEC, did not want to take on the city. And homelessness, we know, often goes along with issues of mental health. The other issue is that to deal with mental health, the physical and the emotional, is also about keeping hope alive. But we have a continuous stream of negative, panic-creating politics from the DA that actually tries to draw hope away and actually make people doubt, make people uncertain. Whereas if we are actually able to build hope based on the real conditions and how people can improve, that is one of the ways we begin to deal with mental health. And the same DA is the one that didn't want a basic minimum wage. They wanted people to get 1,800 Rand instead of 3,500, but they come to this house.
Thank you, Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Thank you for your contribution. Honourable members, I now recognize the Honourable Premier.
Thank you very much, Speaker. And can I start off by saying I wish you'd given the Leader of the Opposition a bit more time because I needed to get an app downloaded, but unfortunately we'll try to get the response from memory on that app. But can I first of all say that I want to thank the Honourable Gillian for bringing this debate to the House. I think that we face many issues in our province, we face many issues in our country. But this is the issue that's now starting to become the dominant issue that's facing citizens across this province, across this country, and across the world at the moment. So I think it is really pertinent that this was brought here. It is a very, very important debate for us to be having. I want to start off also by saying that I agree with the Honourable Dugmore, which I don't often do, but I agree with him that this didn't start with COVID-19. In actual fact, it started before COVID-19, but it's a culmination of a perfect storm of a whole lot of issues coming together and topped by COVID-19, which really starts to tip so many people over the edge. It's a culmination of the COVID-19 loss, this immense loss of life, of jobs, of the ability to look after your family, of the ability to find hope and security in yourself as an individual in our province and to see a future. And of course, you know, it's this COVID-19 pandemic that kind of tipped so many people over the edge. And we see it from the suicide statistics. We see it from just engaging with citizens who tell you they cannot cope anymore. They cannot see that there's going to be a better tomorrow. Of course, it all started prior to this when we as a country were already sitting, and we heard many speakers today talk about our unemployment rate, those people that have lost their jobs during this time. But before the pandemic started, we had one of the worst unemployment rates in the world. All that this pandemic did was took this country to the worst unemployment rate in the world, and by far the worst unemployment rate for young people, youth unemployment rate. When I saw that graph yesterday of youth unemployment, it really hit me to the core. This is as a result of really bad policies from the ANC. Bad economic policies, bad policies that over the last 25 years have not made it better for citizens. We already had that unemployment rate through these bad policies. But of course, exacerbated by that was the immense corruption that our country has suffered. Pravin Gordhan himself saying 250 billion. That's 2,500 million Rand stolen from the people of this province. Imagine if that was put into job creation projects. Imagine if that was put in right now to help those citizens that can't get the 350 Rand a month. And of course, it is also the shocking management that the ANC have put in place over this last while, whether it is the management of SAPS, the energy management of our energy system, our rail system, the SOEs, and right down to SASSA, and how SASSA is managed in the best interests of the most vulnerable population of our country or our province. And I say SASSA managed, I should say SASSA mismanaged. And that's why this government has put a recovery plan. We already put it in place last November, a recovery plan, although COVID-19 is not over. It was to refocus what we were doing. And part of recovery is, of course, safety, jobs, but it is well-being. It is the well-being of our citizens. And so thank you, Honourable Gillian, for bringing it here, because the well-being of our citizens and the mental well-being of our citizens is really under pressure at the moment. The Honourable Baku Force, she also mentioned unemployment, but what she also spoke about was she said that this province has got no mental health programs in place. Where has she been? Where has she been? I've just spoken about the actual program of the 3 focus areas of this government, then just go and have a look at the Department of Health itself and what it's doing for its own healthcare workers, the frontline workers who she speaks about, the whole of society approach from the recovery plan. Please, she needs to look at these documents and then actually have a look at some of the other provinces. But I must commend her on one thing. I've been in this house for 12 years, and it's the first time I've heard an ANC member come up and say, in KZN, I've confirmed that we've put in place this project. Thank you very much, Honourable Member Baku Force. For the first time in 12 years, I've heard someone from the ANC come up with, this is what we're doing somewhere else that's positive. Congratulations on that. She did mention food gardens. I see that we're sitting at 37% of our schools have already got food gardens, and we passed the 6,000 mark of food gardens implemented by our Department of Agriculture. So that is an amazing feat, and this is since March last year. Absolutely unbelievable. The Honourable Klejo, I don't want to really spend too much time other than your policy, sir, in your in your party. These are the Venezuelan and Zimbabwean policies. I promise you, go and do your research. They will just cause more misery. Then I want to say to the honourable members, Fernandes, Marais, Mbombo, and Philanda, who spoke today. But the honourables Fernandes, Marais, and Mbombo, I want to thank you for the leadership role that you are playing in our well-being focus of this government. I want to thank you. The Honourable Member Fernandes spoke about the faith-based organizations and how we link there. Food gardens and the food forums, the homeless, GBV, these issues that our citizens are facing. And thank you for putting those programs together. And not just now, they've been part of this process from March last year and then really reinforced in November. The Honourable Marais spoke about World War II and basically the post-traumatic stress syndrome that citizens faced after the Second World War. And that's exactly what's happening right now. And we are going to be stuck with this for years, and we need to come up with methods and mechanisms to help our citizens, whether it is in our psych wards, in our hospitals, which I agree with the Honourable Dugmore, are under severe stress. In all the hospitals I've visited, those psych wards are dealing with the most vulnerable psychological issues that our vulnerable citizens are facing. Of course, there are problems there too, because they're exacerbated not only by alcohol, but also by drugs. And of course, they are also used as a scapegoat by our policing system. SAPs find it much easier to drop off a drug addict at the psych ward rather than to deal with them because they're a gang member and they've been arrested for the 4th and 5th and 6th time, and the criminal justice system hasn't dealt with them properly. We just clog the psych system with people who should actually be arrested. I want to say thank you for mentioning cycling as always, but also sport and sporting activities, exercise. It is really, we've got to get outside. We've got to exercise. We've got to clear our heads while we are fighting this pandemic, while we're getting recovery back in place.
Thank you, Honourable Premier.
I
thought you had the time there.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Premier. Honourable members, that concludes the debate on the subject for discussion. I now have the next on the order paper is the interpellations. The interpellation that we have, it's only one. The other one was withdrawn by the member who have moved it. Now, this one is by Honourable Lily to Honourable Simmers. I would like to recognize the Honourable Minister of Human Settlements, Honourable Simmers.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, Honourable Premier, my colleague present, and all colleagues virtually online logged into the sitting. I want to thank the Honourable Member for the question posed for this interpellation. The A part is that my department has a debt management policy which contains our debt process, and I will ensure that the member gets a copy of this policy. But in a nutshell, it focuses on to ensure that debtor statements are distributed monthly to all our tenants. Reminders are distributed as soon as a debtor defaults on payment. personal discussions are held with debtors, obviously noting the COVID regulations. If debtors' income has changed, the rental amount is amended accordingly. Payment arrangements are discussed with debtors that default on payment as well as arrears outstanding. Prescribed debt is preferred or is referred to the delegated authority to be written off, and old cases are referred to the state attorney to recover outstanding arrears amounts and inform management on a monthly basis of the status of the debt account. On the B portion, Honourable Speaker, to the member, in March 2020, a strategic decision was taken to redefine the rental stock and shift the focus from primarily catering for low-income housing to also serve the affordable housing market for households earning up to 22,000 Rand a month, while also reserving opportunities to those earning more than this. The departmental rental units are now available to qualifying persons as determined by our new rental turnaround strategy, based on households with a combined income of between 7,500 and 22,000 Rand. The monthly rental for the income group is determined on a sliding scale, I should add. Tenants whose income exceed the upper income band of 22,000 Rand per month will pay the full market-related rental. Honourable Speaker, with all our projects and assets, we are seeking to ensure that integration occurs, as our aim, where it is absent, is to establish and or create integrated human settlements. Every person that qualifies, and regardless of who they are, should be afforded an opportunity to rent, should this be the option they prefer. We must also not lose sight of the fact that rentals are part of our broader affordable housing options. Not everyone is in the position to immediately acquire a property, but this could be their first step towards becoming a fully fledged homeowner. Our function as this provincial government then is to assist our citizenry by making these opportunities affordable. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, I now recognize the Honourable Member Lily.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Good afternoon. Speaker, the Department of Human Settlement until 2016 had no rental policy. Instead, those who were privileged enough before 1994 continued to occupy government properties, paying almost nothing. This department had been maintaining these rental properties and paying rates for these people with no consequences for non-payment of rental. Credit to former MEC Madikizela, who was pushed to resign by the DA White Cabal as from 2016. A rental policy that was meant to redress the imbalances of the past, affording even African deserving people an opportunity to have decent housing occupying the rental units of the department was developed. The policy afforded public servants who could not afford to buy bonded houses as opportunity to rent from the department, which contributed immensely to the revenue collection of the department. Speaker, despite the revenue, there is a drive from the Department of push the auditor of land and asset management section to ensure that these government officials are removed from these rental units. This drive is informed by the fact that Black people have been afforded an opportunity to also occupy the units, which according to this director were meant for a particular group of people. This is, to this end, a new document regarded as the rental policy has been developed by this director and signed by the former HOD, Jacqueline Sampson, which was fired for poor performance. This document was developed to target public servants, raising their rental beyond what is meant to be, to prove that this is a plan to target public servants despite their rental being paid, though a deduction from PERSAL, they are still threatened that their leases will not be renewed. The question is why? These are not social houses, but rental stock with the sole purpose of generating revenue. MEC must therefore tell us why black public servants are targeted while special conditions are created for white families to live in suburbs like Duval Drive, Roxy Avenue in Worcester,
Thank
Muller Street
you,
in Stellenbosch,
Honorable.
and Plumstead
Thank you.
for as little as 100 Rand monthly
Thank you,
rental fees.
Honorable. Your time is up. You have the second bite later, so wait for the second opportunity. Thank you. Honorable members, I now recognize the Honorable Van der Westhuizen.
Honorable Speaker, while we need to maximize the income of the Western Cape Provincial Administration, we also know that not everybody can afford to pay market-related rentals, particularly in our well-sought-after province. Market-related prices are primarily the domain of the private sector, and we are grateful for those entrepreneurs that do serve that portion of the housing market. The management of rental stock is not a simple matter, particularly under the COVID-19 regulations that limit the options to act against non-paying tenants. I'm grateful for this interpellation in the name of Honourable Lilly, as I was getting concerned about his view of his oversight role and membership of this House. Through you, Chair, to Honourable Lilly, Sir, we are missing you at our meetings. You've been absent from all meetings of the Standing Committee since the 1st of April 2021. And I feel sorry that you also missed the Standing Committee on Human Settlements oversight visit to two
Honourable
social housing projects.
Will you please take your seat? I've stopped the timer. Honourable, the Deputy Chief Whip of the Opposition.
Honourable Speaker, on a point of order, and I don't want to belabor the point, I've been raising it in previous sittings. Honourable Van der Westhuizen should not be saying you, Honourable Lilly. He must speak through you, even though we know he did say through you, Speaker, but still, he then went and made a mistake by saying to you, Lilly. He does not speak directly to the Honourable Lilly. And also this, these remarks are not related to the subject of the interpellation.
Thank you, Honourable Said. I think the point that you've made regarding how we should be addressing the Honourable Member is taken. The other issues can be left to the member himself, because it's as much as it is a question and interpellation, it's a political one in nature. So we cannot circumscribe the member's ability to be politicians in the House. Honourable Van der Westhuizen, will you please do not refer to members directly, just refer to them as honourable members. May you please proceed.
Speaker, these projects, known as Glenhaven Anchorage and Bottasig Gardens, cater for families earning between 1,500 Rand and 5,000 Rand. The Honourable Lilly would have seen the beautiful buildings, the benefits of strict control to prevent overcrowding, the pride that tenants display, and the demographics of the tenants. The properties were well kept, the grounds were clean, and tenant safety a priority. I wish that Honourable Lilly would have been there to satisfy himself of the amazing provision and difference that social housing is making to those that cannot afford market-related prices. While the needs always exceed the provision, this province has more than enough reason to be proud of its provision of social housing to the vulnerable. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Van der Westhuizen. Honourable members, I now recognize Honourable Christians.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, my question is the market. It's pertaining to the market-related rentals being paid. Is the department, as we just heard, and it's not my portfolio, but as we just heard, the the property is kept in as neat and looked after. So these rentals that we receive, is it value for money when it comes to the Department of Human Settlements? So it's your income and your expenditure to maintain the place, look after the place. That's one question. So how do the department look at receiving the money that's not market related, and how do they determine when that we give the money out, and we must maintain the place? So is the department looking at that when they also look at rentals paid of non-market related prices? The other question is just, is this, we know that everybody cannot apply for a bond, does not qualify, and all of those things. But is there also assistance in people to get homes of their own, and how does that process work? Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Christians, honorable members. I now recognize Honorable Lily. Honorable Lily, it's your second bite.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, Speaker. The honorable member is just angry that I'm raising issues that he knows that are correct. Speaker, a 67-year-old white female has been staying in a two-bedroom house in Naruna Estate, Plumstead, for over 32 years for just 100 Rand a month. The market-related value for a three-bedroom house in Plumstead is 9,500 per month, while for a two-bedroom is 6,000 Rand and 4.5 for a one-bedroom. This white privilege is costing this government money. Whilst public servants are persecuted by the department, many who have been occupying these units since 1994 are still paying for less than what these public servants are paying. And yet thousands of public servants remain on the waiting list for rental stock. The department is still maintaining units occupied by people who owe the department lots of money in terms of rental. MEC must tell us why. Is it because if their skin color and because they belong to the DA constituency? Is the DA using these rental units to appease them and buy their votes? We actually need SCOPA to investigate how much the government is losing through these deals of maintaining apartheid partial legacy and white privilege. Speaker, we will bring this to the legislature through a substantive motion. We need an investigation against MEC Simas for concealing information in his replies to our questions. In all his replies to questions about the rental stock units, he deliberately withheld information about Gatesville rental units. Tenants have been living in these units without paying any rental. The department is maintaining the units while it does not receive anything in return. The department is busy finalizing the process to hand over ownership of the units over to the tenants for free. This has to be the biggest corruption scandal in the province since the dawn of democracy. We need SCOPA to investigate this matter.
Thank you, Judah. You have exhausted your time. I now recognize the Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister.
Honorable Speaker, no, thank you very much. And it's quite interesting to listen to the Honorable Member Lily's second bite of the cherry, so to speak, but seemingly the member does not read his written responses to the questions which he has requested through my department, Honourable Speaker. And what you ask, that is the response that you get. We do not conceal any information. We give it to you, but it all depends on what you ask. But I think it's quite pertinent to actually focus the members' attention that we are trying to integrate different communities. But obviously, individuals are occupying some of our rental stock, sometimes for more than 40 years. And they are actively paying. And in post-1994, more so in this province, under this governing party, we seek to integrate various different peoples from different communities. We do not see race. We see opportunity for these individuals, but sadly, the Honourable Member Lily is fixated on race. The narrative of everything he asks is race. His complete input today is based on race. But not only that, he's fixated on not identifying the responses which we've given through to him, which would have assisted him so vastly in preparing for today's interpellation a lot better through you, Honourable Speaker. Firstly, in 2017, a rental policy was put in place. This is in terms and in line with the PFMA. In 2020 March, we further updated this rental policy by also introducing a specific policy which deals with allocations. We formulated the sliding scale formula as we now seek to ensure that different salary bands pay different salaries or scales for rental of a unit, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, in 2016, when my predecessor opened up some of these units for those employees of the provincial government, we would never, or he could have never projected the number of individuals who ultimately, even though they work for this provincial government, are seeking affordable housing closer to where they work. And currently, we have on our demand list individuals who are still waiting. It's well over 1,116. But we need to understand we only have provincial stock of 538, something which was pointed out to the member when he asked me a written question. And I responded to that, Honourable Speaker. But Speaker, once again, the Honourable Member through you does not comprehend what affordable housing means. And affordable housing is not what I am saying. It's national policy, which in the Western Cape, we have altered to ensure that we speak to the realities of our people. And Honourable Member, it's rental stock, which you clearly have an issue with, but you forget we are not the only provincial department that has rental stock. At least in our case, our management is improving of our rental stock. Something which, if the Honourable Member ultimately attends the Standing Committee, you would note we do report on the loss of income at our rental stock. Then we have social housing, which seemingly the member is confusing social housing and rental stock. But once again, if the Honourable Member actually attends the Standing Committee, he would know the differentiation. And the third objective of affordable housing is FLISP. And just recently, the Standing Committee had a meeting about the various options. But guess what? The Honourable Member was not present. But ultimately, Honourable Speaker, we divulge every bit of information through our annual reports. If the member just looks at last year's annual report, you would pick up that part of the reason for our turnaround strategy was because the amount of money we were spending in maintaining these stock, which is what we were getting in, did not make economically sense for us. And that was a question that was posed to us during that session. Honourable questions. Well, thank you very much. Yes, we did introduce market-related payments for those earning above 22,000 Rand, because the reality is some of our provincial staff are living in stock. We entered into new agreements with them, but because we respect the rule of law, we had to wait for the rental agreement to cease so we can enter into a new agreement. And many of them welcome that approach as well. Do we get value for money?
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
We will only see that in this financial year. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you. Honourable
Chairperson,
members.
Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Lily.
Mr. Speaker. No, Mr. Speaker, I just want to correct something here.
No, we don't do it like that.
I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, because the what you call the MEC is the minister is misleading the House, saying that I was not attending the meeting.
That way. Order, Honourable Lily.
I'm making an order, Speaker.
Cannot do it that way. Please take your seat and mute yourself there. There are opportunities in terms of the rules, Honorable Lily and honorable members, if you need to clarify a statement or a misstatement by any member in the House during a debate, this is a mini debate as an interpellation, but you don't do it in the House at the moment without having sought an approval from the Speaker, which you can do for the next sitting should the Speaker give you that right. So we follow the process and procedures, and my office will gladly advise how we can do that. So may I request that we don't repeat that conduct, Honorable Lily. May I then request that we move to the questions. I thank you, honorable members, who have participated in the interpellation. Now, the first question for oral reply is the question by Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition, to the Honorable Premier. I now recognize the Honorable Premier.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and thank you very much to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition for the question. The Western Cape Alcohol-Related Harms Reduction Policy White Paper, which is underpinned by an alcohol harms reduction strategy, was adopted by the Western Cape Cabinet on the 30th of August 2017 and published in the Government Gazette on 4 September 2017, with implementation commencing thereafter. In 2017, this is part B of the answer. In 2017, planning began on the development of a draft liquor bill and the necessary supporting evidence required for implementation of a rational, reasonable, and proportional way as required by the Constitution. In 2018, work was undertaken to obtain the appropriate approvals for the drafting of the Western Cape Liquor Bill, inclusive of the range of discussions and workshops with various working groups on the direction of the draft Western Cape Liquor Bill. In 2019, various research initiatives were undertaken during this period and included legal research initiatives and opinions around minimum unit pricing mechanisms and the development of monitoring and evaluation toolkits. An independent external service provider, the South African Medical Research Council.
Premier, I just want to check with the honorable member, Allen. Is that a point of order?
Speaker, no, sir. I am raising my hand in anticipation for a follow-up question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Allen. At that point, Honorable Premier, I just want to indicate to the honorable members, any member who wishes to raise their hand, please do so in terms of the standing rules. I know that the honorable member who asked the question will get the first opportunity. Thereon will get the honorable members who follow up, after which the honorable member has spoken. I recognize the honorable Premier.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I recognize the honourable member's hand prepared and ahead of the game. But thank you very much. I've still got a bit of a way to go with the answer. So I'll just go back to 2019. Various research initiatives were undertaken during this period and included legal research initiatives and opinions around minimum unit pricing mechanisms and the development of a monitoring and evaluation toolkit. An independent external service provider, the South African Medical Research Council, with a team specializing in alcohol-related harms reduction and monitoring and evaluation indicator development, was taken by the Western Cape government to develop an M&E toolkit. The project reviewed and developed an M&E indicator list for the Western Cape government focusing on alcohol-related harms and related indicators. It also provided a critical assessment to the Western Cape government internal evidence, data sources, and relevant local and national data sources. The mechanisms for the Western Cape government data provision collection. The research on the WHO pricing mechanisms, that's the excise and tax and minimum pricing units, reducing alcohol-related harms through pricing mechanisms is one of the 3 WHO best buys, which are mechanisms deemed highly cost-effective in reducing alcohol attributable death and disabilities at population level. A report was delivered on the 1st of October 2018, which indicated that a minimum pricing unit had the potential to significantly impact the consumption of heavy drinkers and that it's an instrument that targets cheap alcohol to reduce riskier harm causing heavy drinking. In 2020, the period provided for the continuation of research and exploring policy and legislative frameworks, primarily around the availability mechanisms, such as the density and trading times. It included research into alcohol outlet density and trading time interventions through utilizing locally devised empirical data to guide the assessment and the development of a provincial policy position. In 2021, initiatives in the current financial year include the continuation of further research, particularly into pricing mechanisms and different trading time levels, but with a South African and Western Cape specific impact assessment across various social and economic variables in the province, such as consumption and reduced alcohol-related health and social harms, example, HIV, IPV, road injury and others, and costs, individual spend, excise tax and VAT, related revenue, hospital and crime costs. These research efforts culminated in a set of proposed amendments to the Western Cape Liquor Act. In principle, approval was granted by the Cabinet on the 9th of June 2021 for the amendment draft bill to be drafted.
Thank you, Honorable Premier. I now recognize the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Just as my first follow-up question, because no doubt I will follow the hand of Honourable Member Reagan, I would like to ask the Premier to confirm that, so after 4 years, what we have as of the 9th of June is not a bill, but actually simply permission to develop the principles of a bill.
Honourable Premier. Microphone.
Thank you very much. I'll start again. Thank you to the Honourable Member for the question. And just to point out, this is not a new bill. This is not policy formation, white paper, green paper, and a new piece of legislation. Of course, the Honourable Member should know that that took around 12 years for the ANC government to deliver on. He was in the government at that time. I was in opposition. And of course, this is an amendment to that existing bill. And of course, this policy doesn't only need legislative amendment. It also has actions taken as we move. So, for example, right now, if I think about the work that has come out of this process, if I think about the trauma report that we use in our health system, that trauma report, which started in 6 hospitals, now is going to 20. We're at 19 already, 20 of our hospitals to actually measure. This comes from this kind of work. And in actual fact, it's very interesting to see how it's even going further through the violence prevention programs. So we've taken the work from the previous term, and that's also linked into the safety plan. And of course, part of the safety plan is in violence prevention, which the health department is leading. And I'm sure the standing committee will be getting a presentation quite soon on how the data-led processes in violence prevention, of which the trauma report is part of it. So it's not only about the amendment bill and changes to our legislation. It's also about other actions that get taken that doesn't necessarily need a legislative amendment, but you can actually implement immediately. And those are the kind of things that have been happening over time. And there's a number of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Premier. I now recognize the Honourable Member Allen. Following Honourable Allen will be Honourable Dagmo.
Honourable Speaker, a point of order.
Is that a point of order?
Sorry, just my hand was up after Member Reagan Allen.
May I recognize there is a point of order in the House. So let me just first take the one in the chamber. I will come back to that issue, Honourable Mackenzie, shortly. Honourable Dagmo.
Just my point of order. I would like to ask where the chairperson of the committee on the Premier is, because he would normally be asking questions. So it's clear that the member,
I'm here, Member
chairperson.
Darkmore. There's not a point of order, Member Darkmore. Please pay your staff salaries.
Honorable Mackenzie, you are not the presiding officer.
Sorry, Speaker.
So you don't get to tell the members when they are raising a point of order or not. Honorable Dagmo, that is certainly not a point of order. So let me just say that whether he participates or he does not participate, it's a prerogative of the member, but fortunately he is here. May I then take your point of order, Honorable Mackenzie?
Speaker, I don't think you saw my hand as well. My hand was also up.
Yes, it is certainly up, and I was just giving the order of speakers. I indicated that it will be Honorable Allen, followed by Honorable Dagmo, and then Honorable Mackenzie. In that order, and then the Premier will be the last as he responds. Now let us proceed, Honorable members. I now recognize the Honorable Member Allen.
Speaker, thank you so much. To the Premier, as part of, through you, Speaker, as part of the alcohol harms reduction game changer strategy, whether the Premier can highlight some reasons with regard to why the custodianship of the Liquor Act was transferred from the Department of Economic Development to the Department of Community Safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Allen. I now recognize the Honorable Premier.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and to the Honourable Member, thank you. I think maybe I'm going to link it to the question from the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, where he speaks about the regulation change in the amendment. But of course, there were other things that happened as a result of looking at alcohol harms, looking at what we need to do around reduction, and what are those things that we can do without legislative change. Of course, really looking at the data and measuring and monitoring, and that was the one. And maybe I'll come back to that. But the second one, or another one of those areas, was to say, at the moment, or at that time, the body that was responsible for licensing for the work that they do, whether it be carrying out the inspections, etc., sat with economic development. And if we were looking at harms reduction, surely we should link it with looking at safety and the policing thereof, rather than the economic side of it. And it was felt then that that was a good strategic move to then position the Liquor Authority not in the economic department, position it in the Department of Community Safety. And so that's where it is now. So I think that was part of that plan, to say this is a focus of this project, of saying this is what we want to do, is effect change. And so I think that was another one of those moves. And it's interesting to see now, because now when you see the report backs coming in Cabinet, for example, when we have a report back from the safety report from Minister Fritz, who then alongside him is the South African Police Services, you have the Provincial Police Commissioner, but also in that report, you have the CEO of the Liquor Authority. And then they would report on, at this time, COVID-19, the regulations, what we're doing about making sure that we're minimizing risk, how many inspections there's been, making sure that, that they are playing that role, not only licensing, but also the oversight role, the policing role with the liquor inspectors. You would have seen another part of that program was increasing the number of liquor inspectors that we have in place. So, sure, I understand the position that's being raised here is, where's the amendment to the bill? But it's also not only about an amendment to the bill. It's also about what are the other actions that you are taking as a government, and that was definitely one of them, and how you moved it from DDAT to DOCS. And perhaps also then to talk about the data and what I said now in the last presentation on violence prevention, and what it'll be really good to see, so that now we are able to monitor, and we're expanding our data system so that it's not only a trauma case that ends up, and it's obviously been highlighted now during COVID-19, because you measure your trauma cases in this pandemic. And of course, we've seen the blunt instruments and the effect on the alcohol industry of these blunt instruments. But you've also seen how we've measured it, and it's used in the rest of the country. The National Minister of Health uses our system in this province. We've just met with the National Minister of Health last week, myself and Minister Mbombo, and we took him through all of the programs and the projects, and we spoke about differentiated approach and how we become more nimble, especially as we move into a fourth and potential fifth wave with vaccinations. And this is one of those other tools that we use, which is as a result of this work that has happened. And the violence prevention data that's coming out now, which, at the end of the last presentation, I was really excited to see that we're now not only saying that there's now an increase of 23% or 58% of trauma cases at a payday weekend, and of those, 83% are linked to alcohol abuse. It is now we can start to expand that data. So we want to know, where did that alcohol abuse take place? What was the cause of the abuse? So we can start GIS mapping whether it was a sharp object or if it was linked to a GBV incident. Where did it happen? So where the EMS called out to collect somebody, that gets GIS mapped, comes back into the data system. And that's really about becoming much smarter as a government, understanding the negatives and understanding that these are what we need to put in place to actually manage the system. So for me, I think we've still got quite a way to go, but it's really nice to see how the work that was happening in the last term is now starting to culminate into the drafting of an amendment, but also in activities and changes that take place within the safety plan linked to a number of departments in violence prevention, but also at the end of the day led not by docs in this case, but that's led by the Department of Health.
Thank you, Premier. Honourable Dugmore, follow-up.
Thank you very much, Speaker. As a follow-up, I would like to ask the Premier that in regard to the second component of the question about what steps were taken to implement it, I think it's clear that those steps would have included consultation. I'm sure, Deputy Speaker, the Premier is aware of another question from another member which outlined 26 meetings which have taken place between MEC, Mainir, and the representatives of the liquor industry. I would like to ask a very particular question. Whether the Premier is aware in regard to that question about steps taken to implement and consultation, whether the Premier knows the former DA MP, Mr. Toby Chance, who describes himself as having left Parliament in 2019 and being involved in entrepreneurial ventures as well as consulting on business, government relations and policy. So in regard to implementation, I would like to ask the Premier directly, has he met Mr. Toby Chance? Has Mr. Toby Chance, as a lobbyist for the liquor industry and a former DA MP, met MEC Mainir? And has Mr. Toby Chance been involved in any of the 26 meetings that either the Premier has been part of or MEC Mainir has been part of? Thank you.
Premier.
Thank you very much. First of all, I do know Mr. Toby Chance. I knew him when he was a member of Parliament. I would imagine the last time I met with him could have been 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And the answer is no, I have not met with him in any liquor industry related meeting. And I do not know if Minister Mainir has met with him.
Thank you, Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Premier, my question would be the Western Cape Liquor Board. They require an advocate for the alcohol harm reduction to be a member of the Western Cape Liquor Board. And I just want to check if any other provinces have similar kind of initiatives.
Thank you, Premier. If Honourable Mackenzie, can you just mention that last sentence of yours again?
if any other province have similar kind of initiatives.
If any other province has similar kind
That's
of.
not sorry, Madam Deputy Speaker. I just wanted to get the first part of the question.
Okay.
It was,
Okay, I can start again. Yeah.
Yes,
the Western Cape Liquor Board, our liquor board in the province, require an advocate for the alcohol harms reduction strategy and to be a member of the Western Cape Liquor Board. And does any other provinces have such initiatives?
Over to you, Premier.
Thank you very much. And yeah, sorry, I didn't get the first part of that question. Alcohol harms reduction and that workshop and that process, said that on a board, and I believe strongly that you need to get right balances on boards. And so the first part of it is, the answer is yes. We must at least have one person who is linked to or a specialist in alcohol harms. I know that on our board, we don't just have one, we have two. And then as far as I know, it is not a requirement on any other provincial liquor board, and I don't know if any other provincial board actually even has that.
Thank you very much. Any further follow-up questions? We've done 4. Okay, thank you very much. That's done. No, there isn't. I've just been told by the table staff. Thank you very much. We now move over to question 2. I now recognize Honourable Minister Mitchell.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, thank you to the Honourable Member for the question. Honourable Deputy Speaker, as per subsection A of the question, I invoke my powers in terms of Section 91 of the National Land Transport Act. A notice was published in the Provincial Gazette whereby I closed the ranks in Mbekweni, the loading loans in Bellville Public Transport Interchange, and the B97 route, which was identified as being one of the burning issues at the centre of the conflict and violence. I, in person, had numerous engagements with the parties involved in order to understand the issues and ultimately get the parties to agree to a ceasefire, while underlying issues such as the dispute over Route B97 are being resolved through an arbitration process. With regards to subsection B of the question, the National Minister of Transport supported me in the initiatives to broker the ceasefire agreement and then ultimately joined me to sign the ceasefire agreement. I must put on record, Deputy Speaker, that I'm grateful to the National Minister and his officials for a collaborative effort in this regard and for not politicizing the issue, unlike some other political parties that soos hulle in Afrikaans sê mosterd na die maal opgedaag het. Subsection C of the question, since the conflict started, SAPS and law enforcement agencies assisted with safety and compliance operations. SAPS and law enforcement personnel, as well as the South African National Defence Force, have been deployed to the Bellville Public Transport Interchange and taxi violence hotspots to protect commuters. The Minister and the Department of Community Safety played a role in coordinating efforts with the South African Police Services and their watching briefs over the cases through the courts, and following recent arrests made by the dedicated team of detectives that have been assigned to investigate taxi-related crimes. In addition to this, Deputy Speaker, the role of traffic and law enforcement agencies, the City of Cape Town and Drakenstein municipalities were integral players in developing a transport contingency plan following the closure of Route B97, ranks in Mbekweni and specific lanes at the Bellville Interchange. Government departments have drawn lessons from the recent conflict and have identified areas of weakness that need to be addressed. Some of these lessons were already presented to the Standing Committee, but in the interest of the House, I'm going to just highlight a few, but the detailed report or detailed answer will be submitted for distribution. Under the rule of law from the Department of Transport and Public Works, investigations, arrests and convictions in cases of taxi-related murders and crimes must be prioritized. We will investigate conflicts of interest and criminal records of all applicants for new operating licenses. We will strengthen the dedicated resources to enforce and investigate public transport non-compliance and crimes. Under the strengthening public transport plans and planning, we will review the supply and demand on key routes, which includes the long distance routes. We will unbundle the network operating licenses. We are busy reviewing the description of that would include a and a B point definition. We will ensure that proactive planning by municipalities for the new developments through a transport impact assessment happens, and then also assessment of municipal capacity for planning development. Which is also important to note, Deputy Speaker, is that we need to empower commuters and communities. And how do we strengthen the commuters' say in their modal preferences? Commuters must be able to be provided with tools and apps to assess and report service standards that will directly be linked to the operating license renewal process. And then, which I have stated in this House before, the regulatory framework review that will strengthen national legislation to address the non-compliance, mandatory tracking and vehicle marking on all as part of the operating license conditions, and then legal action against associations and operators directly linked to violence. We're also busy reviewing, as part of this regulatory framework, the registrar's powers and allowable sanctions, and then under management of the facilities, which includes the public transport interchanges or taxi ranks, that we are embarking on declaring and enforce ranks and interchanges as gun-free zones. We're considering decentralizing ranks, which will allow for remote holding areas, and which will include pickup points for specific routes. And then ultimately, Deputy Speaker, which is very important, to me, is that how do we empower the minibus taxi industry? How do we formalize regional and route-based taxi companies? How do you register taxi drivers and employees for capacity building? And how do you provide taxi owners and companies with tools to monitor and manage vehicle and operations? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for the comprehensive response. Minister, as you know, during the taxi disruption industries, one of the bigger problems was the fact that people couldn't get transport, and part of the big problem was trains. What is the impact being on the train system not functioning during this taxi disruptions?
Thanks, Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Honourable Member for the follow-up question. Deputy Speaker, I think it's important to note that 1.6% of citizens uses the rail system. Now, if you look at how it decreased from 600,000 people using it to just under 200,000 currently, it's a clear indication of what the state of rail has become. Rail used to be, Deputy Speaker, and should still be the backbone of public transport in the city and the broader Cape functional region, because rail provides the most efficient mass transit solution for high commuter volumes. But sadly, it has been a long time since rail has provided this crucial service. The collapse of rail operations has meant that there are a few, if any, alternative forms of public transport that commuters and learners can use, with most turning to the minibus taxi industry and bus services. And during the minibus taxi disruptions, many commuters and learners were left stranded. They were unable to get to and from work and school, and people stood in long queues for hours, and the impact on their lives, livelihoods, and the broader economy was dramatic. This further demonstrates, Deputy Speaker, how crucial it is to restore the rail system so that there's a safe, reliable, and affordable mass transit mode that passengers can rely on. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honourable Mvimbi.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to the Minister for such a very long and comprehensive response. I think he's also mentioned that in the process he has met with quite a number of parties that were involved in the conflict that we have experienced. And also I just wanted to check with the Minister, part of some of the other parties mostly has been the taxi operators in the form of their association, but we've also learned in the process that there were also other people who were mostly affected by this, were the commuters. And then I know that there were quite a number of other associations that came up in the form of other commuter association and also community-based organization, as well as non-governmental organization that also played quite a pivotal role in trying to make sure that a solution is reached. I just want to check from the minister, has he met with any of these community-based organization, NGOs, and even commuter-related association in the process of resolving the conflict? And also, is the minister planning to create or to have any future relationship with these entities?
Thank you very much. Minister?
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the honourable member for the question. Yes, I had an engagement with the chairperson of the Khayelitsha Development Forum. It was actually planned to be a broader, bigger meeting, but due to logistical reasons, I then only had a meeting with the chairperson of the Khayelitsha Development Forum, and also through the through Minister Meyer, that heads the religious leaders engagement. We have also briefed the religious leaders in this province. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Oh, and yes, indeed, as I always stated, my office is always open and I'm always willing to engage. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. I recognise Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Honourable Minister, during the taxi disruptions, there's been extreme and frankly terrible violence and murders leading up to that point of the last few months. Has there been any prosecutions for individuals implicated in these crimes? And has there been any feedback from the National Prosecuting Authority or the SAPS in this matter? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thank you to the Honourable Member for the question. Honourable Deputy Speaker, there were a total of 23 arrests since the recent violence started, 9 of which took place from the 1st of August 2021. And unfortunately, at this stage, no prosecutions have been finalised yet. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much. Are there any further hands? There's
Yes,
one last
Deputy Speaker,
one.
my hand.
Over to you, Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for that response. It's actually obviously quite sad there's been no prosecution. But Minister, when you implemented some of these timed regulations and what the laws allows you to do, what has been the response from the formalized or the legal taxis associations when you finally took that step?
Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Honourable Mackenzie, for that follow-up. Honourable Deputy Speaker, let me first state the fact that both the leadership of Kata and Cadeta, as well as the Provincial Santaco signed that ceasefire agreement with myself and the National Minister was a clear indication that that the parties were willing to agree, firstly, and secondly, that they wanted to get back to work and that they agreed that the violence or the killings should stop. With that being said, Deputy Speaker, while there's no formal feedback from Kata and Cadeta at this stage, we are aware that at other regions of Santaco, Western Cape welcomed the interventions, and together with Santaco National Executive Committee convened a meeting with Kata and Cadeta on the 12th of August, where it was agreed between them that a constitutional conference will be called, where the issue of mother bodies, which is actually the core issue that we're dealing with, and their role in violence will be ventilated. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. That brings us to the end of question 2. We move over to question 3. I now recognise Minister Bredell.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you for the question. The Department of Local Government monitors municipalities to ensure that they follow and operate within the required legislative prescripts. The Department is pleased that the City of Cape Town has followed and adhered to the legislative prescripts that govern electricity tariffs increases in South Africa. The City of Cape Town is leading the charge to diversify energy supply and to promote competitive pricing for consumers, including protecting city suppliers or customers from Eskom load shedding as far as possible, along others using the Steenbras hydro pump station, getting the Atlantis power station up and running by 2023 with plans for a renewable energy hub at the Athlone power station, planning to procure at least 300 megawatts of energy from independent producers, including ongoing consultation with national government to speed this up. Pursuing a range of renewable energy projects from 1 megawatt to 100 megawatt to be owned and operated on municipal land, with a call for proposals issued on low-cost finance solutions over a period of 20 years. The city provided more protection than all other metros against Eskom's steep price increases for 21-22 financial year. The city managed to come in 32% below the national increase to municipalities, 13.48% versus 17.8%. This is despite the fact that the cost to the city of Cape Town is 3% more to buy electricity than cities situated closer to Eskom generating plants in the north. The city was able to absorb some of Eskom's increases by running a cost-efficient electricity service, even with tight margins, with increasing input cost. The city has indicated that all income from electricity sales goes towards the provision of services. This includes load shedding protection and city supply customers where possible, and 80% of electricity outage fixed within 3.5 hours. The city continues to offer help to struggling households, including 27% of city suppliers, Cape Town households, get free basic electricity on a lifeline tariff, among the highest proportion of households for any metro in the country. Gauteng average at 15.9% versus City of Cape Town 27%. Lowest commercial and residential rates of metros in South Africa, with Cape Town 25% lower than Johannesburg and over 2 times lower than eThekwini, based on a cent in the rand, a statutory measure to calculate property rates. 3.35 billion in rates relief for 2021-22 financial year, including 1.99 billion for indigent relief and 1.35 billion in rates rebates. 4 billion debt write-off and payment incentives is available to aid struggling residents and foster a culture of payment. Pensioners, disabled and indigent rebates, as well as rebates for public benefit organizations. In cases of debt recovery, limited deductions on prepaid electricity purchase only occurred if there is no payment arrangement in place despite warnings and notifications, or if in terms of an existing arrangement are not being honoured. City of Cape Town tariffs among the lowest of all metros. Cape Town residents generally get more units compared to Johannesburg, with tariffs amongst the lowest of all metros, especially when you use less. Cape Town is still amongst 300 rand cheaper than Johannesburg for 600 units, including all fixed monthly costs and VAT, 1,634 rand versus 1,928 rand. The subsidized lifeline electricity tariff is available to households with prepaid electricity meters using an average of less than 450 units per month and a property value less than 400,000 rand, or registered indigent 7,000 rand or less monthly household gross income, or registered for disabled or pension rebate, including rental tenants who would otherwise benefit from this property rebate. On the lifeline tariff, households receive 60 units free electricity if consumption is less than 250 units per month. 25 units free electricity if consumption is greater than 250 units but less than 450 units per month. No fixed charges, a subsidized tariff of R1.64 per unit including VAT after 3 units and up to 350 unit use. From 350 to 400 units average usage ceiling for this tariff, a normal block tariff rate of R3.32 per unit including VAT applies. In terms of electricity tariff structure, it costs less for the first 600 units bought in each calendar month on the home use domestic tariff and less for the first 350 units on the lifeline tariff including 3 units. This use less, pay less system generally helps lower tariffs for the majority of households in Cape Town, with average monthly consumption levels generally at around 600 units or less for households on a home use or domestic tariff. The city offers residents access to a range of support with advice including if you had debt arrears, make payment arrangement. If you qualify for indigent or pension assistance, approach the city. Large bulk electricity purchase are not cheaper. When buying in bulk, one runs the risk of moving into a higher tariff category. Always buy only what you need for a calendar month and try to keep the usage below 600 units per month. Save electricity by turning the geyser to 60 degrees, showering instead of bathing, 80% less water and 5 times less electricity, and using energy-saving light bulbs like LEDs, etc. Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Makamba-Botja, you want your first chance to respond?
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and thanks to the Minister. I just want to find out from the Minister, since the city has introduced what is known as the indigent support or rates relief for people earning 7.5 or less, where they can qualify for discounts on electricity, amongst other things. So what I want to know is what has the department done to assist the city financially in making sure that those who qualify for such relief get a greater discount and that the majority of people who apply and qualify are all assisted? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Minister.
Deputy Speaker, I hope I understand the question correct. We don't subsidize the City of Cape Town or give them any grants to help. The City of Cape Town, all municipalities, they've got the right to generate income, and within that they cross-subsidize and they help the poorest of the poor. They do get equitable share, and through that they also help. But it's not that the province get involved within. We monitor to see to it that they stick within the legislation and the legal framework. And then obviously if they're cheaper and if they can save cost, we're very happy and very glad to be part of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable van der Westhuizen.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And if there's a possibility of a second follow-up, I'll appreciate that. Speaker, through you to Minister Bradell, while Eskom applied for tariff increases of 15% per annum for the next 3 years, Eskom remains in the news for all the wrong reasons, particularly with allegations of its supply chain management system being used to bankroll some connected to the ANC at the expense of the poor. And my question is, how does the criteria for residents in Cape Town to qualify for the basket of free services available to the indigent differ from that as proposed by the national government? And does it mean that more needy Cape Townians qualify for support than in ANC-run municipalities? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you to Honourable Member for the question. Yeah, obviously, we're very proud that the City of Cape Town is one of the cheapest cities to live in. And where there's national criteria, we also understand that some municipalities cannot get to that, where we normally used to have 50 units of free electricity, 6 kiloliters of water, etc., etc. The city provide more than the national average. And also, if you look at the total cost, as soon as when people can pay, and especially the market which use under 600 kilowatt, they save up to 200 to 300 rand a month, and that is good news to them. We do worry about the management within the whole ESCOM, saying that we must also realize that there's good personnel within ESCOM that also keeping the lights on a daily basis. As a province, we do research with the universities, and at a certain stage we will share that research also with the standing committee, and we call it to work out a dignified basket. And the question is actually, what do you need to have a dignified life? And actually, if you work through that, we will need to find out ways to increase the free electricity to households, especially the poorest of the poor, because in today's life with technology, to get children and to support children that's in schools with laptops and computers, and to get all your cell phones up and running, etc. Even the 60 watt can needs to be worked on. We do have research that show that we need to actually start working towards a more lenient system where we can increase that to plus minus 100 watt, but 100 units. But what we need to understand is that all municipalities finances are now under huge threat. Nothing is for free, and it all boils down to a mismanagement on a national level. You can go back to Medupi and Kusile and the corruption within that, the cadre deployment within that, the looting within that, and then after they've started Medupi and something like 7 to 9 days afterwards, a blow up that will cost over 2 billion rand. Now, when the ANC is finished with that, I think it can go up to 10 billion, but no one knows. But it's mismanagement that puts huge pressure on the tariffs. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. I recognise Honourable Nkondlo.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Is the MEC aware and his response on the third-party resellers of electricity, which the City of Cape Town provides bulk connection points to for flats and other sectional titles, which then those would install their own third-party electricity meter to measure and bill the individual units, which this is against one of the bylaws of the city that protects the end user from additional charges which are provided when electricity is actually provided for by a third party. Is he aware, and what is his response to that?
Thank you, Minister.
Deputy Speaker, I'm not aware, and the member must understand those kind of complaints will be dealt by the city with the electricity department, and obviously they will take legal action and deal with that. That's part of the discipline within the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now recognise Honourable Heron. Unfortunately, Honourable van der Westhuizen, and you don't have another opportunity. Honourable Heron.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the minister's provided a very detailed response to the question around the electricity tariffs in the city of Cape Town, and I'm wondering if he has the same kind of detail for the municipalities and the rest of the province, because the city has decided not to answer our questions. So how has this question been answered in such detail if the city has decided it won't answer questions from members of parliament, or is the city decided and the minister's endorsing that it's just my questions that won't be answered?
Minister.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, to Honourable Aaron, the city had a legal opinion on questions where we don't have oversight over the city. The city is an independent government sphere. I think it's their right to take up that. I think it was a learning curve for all of us dealing with questions. And I was of the opinion that maybe they take it a bit too far. So we've got a senior advocate's opinion. And at the end of the day, we agree the city is an independent government sphere, and where I don't have jurisdiction to monitor or we cannot force an answer out of them, that should be put directly to the city. You do have councillors within the council chamber. They can pose those questions. So it's not us nitpicking, but there will also be a change in procedures. How are we going to answer questions going forward with the new POPIA Act? These are legislative prescribed, and we will need to adhere, and I think the legislature will respect that there's new rules, etc. But the first part of Honourable Haran's question, I think it's very important. We do research on the tax base of municipalities to compare, to see what's going on within the market and how they deal with their customers. If you look at the property rates, I think we still need to, and we discuss it currently with municipalities, that we need a lot of work on that, because from where I'm sitting, I don't think it's fair that a municipality like Beaufort West tariffs are 3 times higher than City of Cape Town, for instance. We must also understand that all municipalities' tariffs can't be the same. But obviously, I want to roll that now out to the services department to see to what they charge people. Electricity tariffs, Honourable Haran, can get very complex. It's a very lengthy spreadsheet, but obviously we need to look after and to protect the consumers, and especially the poorest of the poor. And therefore, we've done a lot of research on the basket, the dignity basket, that people really need to have a dignified life. And at any time, I will talk to the chairperson. They can invite the department and the university to come and present that research, because I think there's much to learn from that. So from that, thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of question 3. Honourable members, we have 8 minutes left. I'm going to start the next question. We might only get through to one response. So I hand over now to Minister Fritz.
Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I had my hand up. I'm not
yes,
sure
unfortunately, there's only 4 opportunities, and the 4 opportunities have been fulfilled. Thank you. Over to Minister Fritz.
Enkosi. Good afternoon. Salam alaikum. Thank you, Honourable Member, for this question. And I think one of the big issues that we have found now, Honourable Member in the House, through you, Speaker, is that many of our government cars, not only the City of Cape Town cars, but also government cars, are being targeted in the townships. And there are very specific types of cars that's been targeted. Those are Avanzas that are used as taxis in many of the townships. And so the one very specific question that you asked around the hijacking of cars, and the city declared this area or that area as hotspot areas. That's so. Then your second part of the question: what do we do about, and this is why we have, as a government, and I think Premier spoke quite extensively today around the safety plan, and how the rollout of the safety plan. And some skeptics who will always remain skeptics. They will never see, and that some of them want to become mayors. They will never understand that. I don't think they have even read the safety plan. They will always have their problems and their negativity. But the majority of people are celebrating and welcoming the efforts that we are making in many of these areas that never have seen police at this level. Someone said to me yesterday on a WhatsApp, Deputy Speaker, they see all these cars coming into Mitchell's Plain, all these police and law enforcement cars of the city, led by the police, and they asked what was happening. And an operation, a leap operation was taking place. People saw it. The visibility was clear. And so my answer, just to answer the Honourable Kego, is that the department has put in place several measures under the auspices of the Western Cape Safety Plan to eradicate crime hotspots in the Western Cape. And those are those hotspots that he speaks of. The objective of the Western Cape Safety Plan is to halve the murder rate in the province over the next 10 years by integrated law enforcement, social cohesion, and urban design interventions. And it's important to look at all of that. Because some of my honourable friends who want to become mayors, they just see law enforcement They forget there are urban design components. There are social cohesion components that are very, very important, because until we get that right, we will never get far. Sorry. These interventions are always based on data and evidence, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and is designed at addressing the challenge of violence historically. Because in many of our areas, we have historical issues with violence. We have historical issues with how we settle scores, how we resolve disputes. And I think the point about what we're making here is to deal with it almost historically. And in the ANC terms, my honourable friends will say in a very dialectical, organic dialectical process, the Marxist analysis. It is very interesting. The criteria used to identify the hotspots are based on data sourced from the Department of Health, area profiles, and SAPS data. Now, I want to just say to the House that some of the most amazing data we get from health, and you heard what Premier earlier said in some of his answers, how the Department of Health is playing a role in terms of safety. How we've determined how many people were stabbed from a particular hotspot area, Deputy Speaker. And so that we know next time how we should align the forces for operational purposes in those areas. How many gunshots were fired in a particular hotspot area? And how do we then align our human resource for active policing into those areas? I tell you, it's absolutely amazing. Some of us here on this platform will unfortunately not understand, will not comprehend, because they call the stuff fake, because they have no clue of it. The other important point that we also have to make is that when you have that data-led evidence, data-led information that assists us in deployment, that assists us in also looking at what other interventions other departments can do, that's when it becomes very, very, very important. And the focus for implementation is in priority areas using a geographical approach, which there are 16 areas, of which 11, remember we have 11 hotspots in this metro, with the other 5 in the district, right through the province, so that people can't say that we only work in the metro, that we also have district areas. And I can just give a practical example. Someone asked me on a radio show last night, in a very practical way, in Worcester, in that district of Cape Winelands, Avian Park is the hotspot. There's only a small place in Worcester that's the hotspot. Not the whole area of Worcester, just that Avian Park. So one can focus on that area to get the violence down and to stop, but also do the interventions that we call, the social interventions that we can mention. The Philippi Policing Precinct is one, and this is where he asked the direct question, is one of the identified areas. The implementation will be led by area-based teams that brings together national, provincial, and local government. And Deputy Speaker, I want to say to you, we are busy with some work around policing powers. And we have now looked at the constitution again of South Africa, because for many years, all of us just said, and it's so weird, I'm part of it, I'm guilty of it. I cannot believe that we haven't read the constitution properly and look at the powers functions of policing within the constitution. And there are far more extensive policing powers that's devolved to the province within the constitution. Not something that we want to go and create. That's there, that you must just read properly and interpret properly. And I tell you, we are very excited on taking that on, specifically as many of those powers are vested within me as the MEC in this province. And so I want to alert the House that you are going to have excitement. You're going to have real raucous debates around some of the stuff. And I hope you go read your constitutions. I will give some lessons online and invite some of the members to join me so that we can prepare for debates on online constitutional law. We also work, Honourable Deputy Speaker, with non-government organizations, community law, and you know, our neighborhood watches is one of our best community-based safety structures. They really work well. Our CPFs they are the other structures, and our CPFs specifically. I just want to remind people that there's only 4 CPFs in this whole province who haven't had their AGMs because of political issues. But we are always accused of not dealing with the CPFs. CPFs, most of them had the AGMs, and we're very, very proud of that. Those are the community organizations that will assist Honorable Keko with solving and stopping and making these areas not hotspot areas, but areas that people can live forwardly. Sorry, madam.
The time is almost up. If you could just finish off your sentence, and we will have to end questions.
I have about 4 paragraphs still to go. Because they asked me a very honest question. Okay, I think, Honorable Deputy Speaker, I'll stop at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. That does bring us to the end of time for questions. Thank you to everyone, and apologies we can't do any follow-ups. We will now move over to statements. I now recognize the DA.
Deputy Speaker, the latest quarterly labour force survey confirmed what we all know. The ANC is killing jobs and creating levels of unemployment never seen before in our country's history. Meanwhile, the Western Cape is the jobs province. We still hold the lowest unemployment rate, and our residents stand the best chance of meaningful work across the country. But our challenge is that we don't have a partner in creating jobs from national government. In fact, we have an adversary which blocks and denies jobs. The Standing Committee on Agriculture learned earlier this week that even primary agriculture, which until now was a shining light in terms of job creation, shed tens of thousands of jobs over the past year. This despite bumper crops being implemented in many of our most labor-intensive agricultural sectors. Unfortunately, national government is dead set on continuing its path of economic destruction with events or debates such as on the expropriation without compensation. During the briefing, it was also revealed that many of the new small-scale farmers cannot adhere to the prescribed minimum wages. This is a direct result of these job creators being unable to raise funding due to the 30-year lease programs that are not providing security when they apply for capital loans at banking institutions. Instead of killing jobs and forcing more people to turn to SASSA lines, the ANC should follow the Western Cape government's example. Over 4 years, the Department of Agriculture supported 20 land reform projects which helped small-scale farmers to grow deciduous fruit and other farms. Speaker, today there are 514 permanent jobs created, providing dignity to our communities. I plead with the leader of the official opposition in this House. Please join us in stopping your party from preventing South Africa's economic potential from being realized. This country is well endowed with wonderful people and huge mineral riches. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I now recognize the ANC. Before the ANC begins, if I can just ask Honourable Nkondlo, I think that's an old hand, if you could just lower your hand. Yes, it's Honourable Nkondlo's hand's been up for a while. Honourable Said, is that you? Yes, you may. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The African National Congress is often inundated by members of the public coming to us with allegations of corruption at our schools in the Western Cape, and the DA's refusal to address these allegations. Corruption and maladministration by those entrusted to lead our schools deprives our learners of a quality education and a meaningful future. This past Tuesday, the Public Service Commission told this legislature's Education Committee that at Mowbray's Rhodes High School, the bursar was found guilty of fraud and misappropriation of school funds, whilst the principal embezzled over R500,000 from the school's trust fund, which was never approved by the governing body. The report also found the principal guilty of nepotism by appointing his unqualified son for a position at the school. Despite this, the education department allowed the principal to retire without any fuss. The department was negligent of its supervisory and oversight duties and did not institute proper controls to detect any of the fraudulent activities at the school. Moreover, the department failed in its duty to investigate complaints about financial irregularities. Sadly, Deputy Speaker, learners and parents to this day are suffering as a result of the financial loss caused by this looting. The school has since had to increase its fees. The department's atrocious control measures were actually highlighted by the Auditor General's successive reports since the 2018-2019 annual report. In fact, the PSC told us on Tuesday in no uncertain terms that the department's report on the allegations sought to mask the corruption and administrative rot at Rhodes High School. If MEC Schaefer does not release the full forensic report into allegations of corruption at Golden Grove Primary School, which I raised in this House, not the cover-up that I was given, we will ask the PSC to review and to investigate the allegations at Golden Grove as they have done with Rhodes. We are not going to let these matters rest, Deputy Speaker. In fact, we call for a full forensic investigation into financial affairs at Rhodes High. We demand the department lays criminal charges against the principal and that the funds are recuperated. I thank you.
Honourable Syed, you are way over your time. Okay. I recognise the EFF. Please, Honourable Members, if you can just respect the time. Thank you. You may begin.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The EFF is not shocked by the recently released crime statistics, which continue to place the Western Cape as the epicenter of crime. In the latest statistics, conduct crime in the province has increased by 50%, while sexual-related crime is increased by 74%. All this happened despite the province wasting millions of rands in the so-called safety plan, which has not yielded any results since its inception and will continue to do as such. An increase in sexual-related crimes also shows that the province cannot protect the women of the province, who remain at the mercy of the gender-based violence perpetrators. It is high time that the people of the Western Cape stand up and realize that there is no leadership in the province, as marauding gangs and criminals rule this province with impunity. In the Western Cape, we are often told that the safety plan is an interdepartmental initiative in which all departments in the province play a part. So the increase in the crime means that each and every department is useless so far as their contribution are concerned, and actual fact that they do not know what they are doing. The recent taxi wars an incident where a final nail in the coffin, exposing how the province cannot resolve disputes, which ended up leading to fatalities and placing the rest of the society in danger. The DA-led government must just admit that it has failed and must immediately relinquish power. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I now recognise the DA.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I want to recognise and thank the many residents who have made use of their vaccine opportunities. They play an important role in helping us beat COVID-19, save lives, jobs, and secure a free future. This past Saturday, I received a message from my daughter. I got my vaccine. I want to live a full life. Speaker, with all the emojis one could find. One cannot be prouder for being an influence on even one person who chooses life when considering the massive implications of COVID-19 on the youth. Soon we will reach the 2 million mark of jabs administered in the Cape. The provincial government and municipalities are scaling up efforts at centres daily. Last week, the city's mobile site reached almost 2,000 residents, and we're still the only province with a dedicated effort to vaccinate the homeless, the most vulnerable residents. Deputy Speaker, yesterday during our Health Committee unannounced oversight visit to the Breede Valley, we were privileged to be guided by a pregnant Sister France at Worcester CDC, diligently attending to patients. Sister displayed the true sense of a passionate healthcare worker executing a task daily with dignity, a woman who, carrying a new life, not for a moment shies away from the care for those who need. Deputy Speaker, there is still life within COVID-19, and the uptake of vaccine are our lifelines. The WHO describes vaccine hesitancy as a delay in acceptance or refusal of vaccines despite availability. And so I commend the uptake thus far amongst young people and women in particular. My party's campaign to get vaxxed is testament to this, and those who will continue to share the correct, reliable information and encourage others. Vaccine hesitancy requires us all to share the right information. Let us rather choose life. Let's choose a better future, and let's choose to get vaxxed. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Heron. Party from Good, sorry. Well, it is Honourable Heron.
It is Honourable Heron, yes. I have no statement to make, thank you.
Okay, apologies about that. The ACDP?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, tomorrow we will hear from the Constitutional Court if the 2021 local government elections will be postponed or not. This extraordinary circumstances that found by the Mesomneki Commission to postpone local government elections is important, seeing that we are in the third wave and that people's livelihoods and lives are at risk. And that's why the ACDP is guided by the concern, the empathy and clarity of visionary leadership and political maturity. Hence, we add our voice that the elections must be postponed until next year. But Deputy Speaker, it is sheer arrogance from the DA and this Western Cape government to oppose the recommendations of the Mesomneki Commission that calls for the postponement of local government. The Mesomneki Commission did the research, they say it must be postponed. Now you get the arrogance of the DA and this government to oppose that. The ACDP wants to know, the Western Cape government is now a respondent in the matter, what the cost will be, and what is the projected cost that this government will spend taking the matter to court. This government always complains about national government's wasteful expenditure and maladministration, and rightly so. This government always complains about there's not enough money to render service delivery, rightly so. But what business does this government have to join with the DA in a court case? The question is, who's funding? Is the DA spending money on this court case, or is this provincial government and the MEC Anton Padal paying towards this court case? The public must know, because this is taxpayers' money. This money can be used for something else, because this government always seeks for money, and now they're throwing away money. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I recognize the ANC.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. The ANC takes this opportunity to commend our national ANC-led government for their commitment to land restitution, land redistribution, and security of tenure. We wish to note the following, that our President Ramaphosa has articulated how colonial and apartheid land dispossession is in fact the original sin in our country. Secondly, that the efforts to address this original sin and the process to complete both the expropriation bill and to amend Section 25 of the Constitution so as to ensure better tools to expropriate land, and I must emphasize, if needs be, without compensation for land reform continues at a national level. On the other hand, the DA in this province has made it clear that it does not want to support land reform, that it wants to protect the current domination by the white population of our province of practically all agricultural land. This is simply unsustainable. The DA is unashamedly the protector of privilege. The Western Cape African Farmers Association has come out to question the provincial government's commitment to transformation in the agricultural sector, noted by Ismail Mutala, and he says we cannot have an agriculture department that is purely a conduit for the distribution of the caste support program funding, which in fact is from national government. Mr. Mutala says that these funds made available by the ANC-led government are simply all that the provincial department is doing, and they are not interested in actually transforming the sector. The ANC commends our national government for ensuring that the question of land is addressed. This program, Deputy Speaker, will continue in this province in spite of the DA. We will give leadership and engage communities and municipalities on a land identification and release program. And in this regard, we will meet organized agriculture as the ANC, as well as farm workers and the organizations that represent them. I so move.
Thank you very much for being on time. Now recognize the DA.
Deputy Speaker, the National Police Minister has tried to explain away the double-digit increase in crime as a result of budgetary constraints and bizarrely a crime holiday due to the hard lockdown. This is his response to the first quarterly crime stats from 1 April to the end of June 2021. It is extremely dangerous, Deputy Speaker, to attribute the fluctuation of statistics to criminals taking a break. The ANC at the National Union, the ANC at the Union buildings is effectively telling us that they have no control over crime unless criminals take a break, or that the president places us all under house arrest. Deputy Speaker, it is unacceptable to blame budget cuts when our national government last year bailed out SAA to the tune of 10.5 billion rand, a bailout that was funded by cutting the budget to SAPS, the courts and prosecuting authorities. Deputy Speaker, although SAPS is a national competency, this week our Committee on Community Safety was briefed by the Department of Community Safety on the Western Cape's Recovery Safety Plan. The EFF was indeed present in this committee, Deputy Speaker, where it was revealed that interventions by the safety plan has improved the recovery rate of illegal firearms by 372%. This was achieved despite the nationally imposed budget constraints on the province. But this data shows us, Deputy Speaker, that our safety efforts are working, and that when we have collaboration with all policing agencies, including SAPS, we can achieve so much more to keep our communities safe. Deputy Speaker, in clamping down on illegal firearms, we can prevent weapons from landing back in the hands of criminals. Stats have shown that 62% of homicides here in the province are related to shootings. So what next, Deputy Speaker? We need the National Minister of Police to get his house in order, to match the efforts of the Western Cape government and to support overburdened officers and detectives here in the Western Cape, and critically to fix the broken system so that the illegal guns can be destroyed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now recognize the Freedom Front Plus. No. Okay, we'll move over to Al-Jamal.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Honorable Deputy Speaker, agriculture is one of the most important industries as it is responsible for feeding the world and to be a step ahead to meet the ever-growing demand for food. In November 2020, the National Minister of Basic Education, Angie Motshekga, published a new curriculum policy document for public comment, which will introduce several new subjects at schools. The 13 new subjects will be for grades 8 and 9 learners who will not necessarily complete grade 12 or enter university. The proposed subjects include agriculture, art, and other technology subjects. In November last year, the WCED confirmed that the department could not account for 114,588 learners, and principals throughout the province raised concerns over dropouts. The United Nations World Food Programme has also recognized the need to increase opportunities for students to enter the agricultural industries and for learners to make a success out of a career in the agricultural industry. They must be prepared at primary school level. The department should encourage all schools to have food gardens to offer basic training in management skills for the food gardens and create an awareness on the agricultural industry. We call on the department to liaise with National to speed up the implementation of the new curriculum, also to liaise agricultural institutions like Elsenburg Agricultural Training Institute in Stellenbosch to consider the intake of grade 8, 9, 10, 11 and school leavers interested in pursuing a career in the agricultural industry. Not only will they learn farming, but also be skilled for sustainable employment or start their own farming businesses. I thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I now recognise the DA.
Deputy Speaker, 3 years ago, a report by Corruption Watch indicated that maladministration and the misuse of funds at schools are becoming a growing concern. Of the 5,000 complaints received, 750 schools nationwide were accused of such acts. The National Department welcomed the release of this report and committed to elevate these issues. But we know all too well, Deputy Speaker, that South Africa is plagued with ANC-sponsored corruption in the public sector, of which basic services are the victim. Deputy Speaker, this week the Standing Committee met to discuss actions taken by the WCED to address such cases. I commend the WCED's full cooperation with the Public Service Commissioner and its recommendations, but more so, it is undertaking additional measures to see no further cases in the Western Cape. This includes training all new elected SGBs on fraud and corruption awareness, identification and safe reporting mechanisms and appropriate responses, financial management training, and ensuring the SGBs declare personal interest in particular. But Deputy Speaker, there is a tremendous concern. Why is it only the Western Cape that complies with the PSC? Where are provincial PSC officers when schools in the Eastern Cape still have pit latrines? Where are they when there are no roofs over their heads for learners and teachers elsewhere? It can't be only the Western Cape that sets new benchmarks. We need all education departments on board. Learners all over South Africa deserve so much more. Deputy Speaker, we have had enough talk shops on rooting out corruption. I commend the WCED for their efforts to make sure we recover and address concerns, but we are in need of deliberate and urgent intervention from national government to put an end to maladministration of the public purse. I thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of statements. In terms of Rule 145.6, I now give one of the members of the Executive an opportunity to respond to members' statements for not more than 5 minutes collectively. Nope. There, I do see a hand. I see Minister Schaefer. Over to you, Minister.
Thanks very much, Deputy Speaker. I need to respond, first of all, to the statement by Honourable Syed, who once again is trying to grandstand, but doesn't seem to quite understand processes in government or in the criminal justice system. First of all, the DA does not investigate. The DA is a political party and we are in government here, so we observe the separation of party and state. I know that's a difficult concept for the ANC to understand, but we do that. So the DA doesn't investigate anything in government. We investigate things within our political party. But the DA government certainly does investigate, and we did, as we told the Standing Committee on Tuesday, that we did in fact investigate Rose High. Then there was absolutely no attempt to whitewash anything. I do understand also, and thank you very much, Honourable Botha, for your statement. I have yet to see the PSC engage in this kind of robust engagement at standing committees of other provinces, and I really would like to see that happen as well. But it's not correct that we didn't do it. It's not correct we tried to whitewash. We did take actions. The governing body at the time implemented recommendations that we had given them. Last year, we have already reported this action to the police. There is a case number from last year. And the other thing that Honourable Syed doesn't seem to understand is we can't tell people that they may not retire or resign. If they decide to resign or retire, then we can't sit and put them in chains and keep them at a school so that we can take action against them. And if we aren't the employer, we haven't got the ability to take action against them in the department. So criminal matters has been laid. As far as the Golden Grove, well, unfortunately, Mr. Gesanto Bader from the so-called independent media, independent newspapers previously, has unfortunately chosen to collaborate with somebody who isn't able to actually formulate a question properly for a PIE application. So if you put your PIE application in properly via the Deputy Speaker, then there will be a report that you actually want. But if you ask for a report from the WCD and it wasn't a report of the WCD, then unfortunately we have to comply with the law and give what you ask for. So if you want a report of the forensic services, then please ask for it and you will get it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I recognize Honourable Minister Bredell.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, to Member Christians, I get your statement. Let me just respond. First of all, the Commission under the leadership of Judge Mosoleke, the terms of reference was never to determine the election date, first of all. Secondly, we as government needs to protect the Constitution at all costs, and this is why we've decided to oppose, because from where I'm sitting, the Constitutional Court serves also under the Constitution, and they don't have the authority to change the Constitution. Can you think in future if a court can change the Constitution? If you want to shift and change the election date, you must go back to Parliament. That's our argument. We don't, and we think it's the right thing to do to protect the public and the public interest. To Honourable Van der Westhuizen, thank you very much. That's the subject of agriculture. Food security is very important in this country, and to build the agriculture industry under the every year more and more to support upcoming farmers, to support the agriculture industry. When the ANC cadres wants to throw out a farmer in Darling because of his skin color, it was Dr. Ivan Meyer who stepped in to protect that farmer. I find it odd and ingenious that Honourable Darkmore is standing up here and try to defend and come up with new agriculture programs. They must tell us where in this country have the ANC succeeded with any agriculture programs, and you won't find it. Go to the Free State. It's one big bankrupt nest where they loot the state even more. If you look at rural development and land reform, it's full of ANC cadres. It's the only prize you can give them is the most useless of all the useless departments within this country. Is the only prize they can get. And they must go and look at all the land that they own currently, and they don't pay any taxes to municipalities. That's another thing that the ANC needs to look in, but they won't, because they want to defend looting by all costs. So it's very ingenious of the Honourable Dartmouth to stand up here and to brag about nothing actually. The Honourable Dr. Ivan Meyer and the Department of Agriculture do their utmost best in very difficult circumstances to see that there's food security in the future and to help our upcoming farmers. And we cannot say the same from the ANC government. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ministers. We now move over to notices of motion in terms of Rule 151. All notices of motion by members are required to be delivered to the Secretary for placing it on the order paper. These motions have been duly submitted and published on the order paper below the line. In terms of Rule 150, in terms of motions without notice, I'd like to inform you that in terms of the standing rule of 150 pertaining to motions without notice, condolence and congratulatory were submitted to the Programming Authority prior to this plenary on 24th of August 2021. Members are reminded that the motions without notice pertaining to congratulatory and condolence will not be allowed in the sitting and have not been processed by the Programming Authority. I have been informed in the meeting on the 24th of August that political parties did submit the names of honourable members in the desired order of speaking and who had wished to move a motion without notice in the sitting of this House. I will therefore, just for noting and for the purpose of the minutes, call out the honourable members whose names have accordingly been submitted and approved. The following members' motions have been approved by the Programming Authority as follows. Honourable Botha, Honourable Christians, Honourable Bartman, Honourable Barnes, Honourable Bartman, and Honourable Karma. I now put the motions duly submitted and approved by the Programming Authority to the House. Are there any objections?
No.
No objections. Agreed to. The motions will appear in the minutes of the proceedings and in the Hansard in each individual member's names as if that member had read them out aloud. I will now afford the opportunity to members to move motions without notice as per standing rule of 152D. This could also include motions without notice that were not approved in the Programming Authority meeting. Members are reminded that the 30 minutes as per the standing rule will start now. I recognize the Honourable Member Lecker. She's not here. Yeah, it was not approved. Okay, I'm going to move over to Honourable Sayed. You're number 2.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I move without notice that the House notes with grave concern the numerous additional so-called courses, various workshops, and many fraternal get-togethers for teachers and learners that are forced down at an extra payment, which is placing a financial burden on teachers and on parents, and which is financially exclusive by its very nature, and thus entrenches the class divide between schools in our province. Further notes that this builds an exclusive elitist superiority system within the state environment at great cost to teachers who are told to pay their way, and that this exploitation must stop immediately, starting with the Creative Arts Conference hosted by the Rustenburg Girls Junior School in partnership with the WCED tomorrow and Saturday, which should either be called off or attendance must be at no cost to teachers. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice?
Yes.
Object.
There are objections. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I now recognize Honourable Sayed again.
I move without notice, Deputy Speaker, that the House notes that in Grassy Park, the Stephen Road Primary School is without electricity for 3 months now, have trouble with water for 2 years, and boys and girls are forced to share toilets for many months due to a number of problems which the Western Cape Education Department does not address, despite numerous calls. Further notes that this is only one of a number of poor, struggling schools that are struggling with these type of challenges, and resolves that these problems at vulnerable schools be addressed as soon as possible. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice?
Yes. Object. The cables are
There are
stuck all the time.
The
They
motion will
don't
be
deal with the
printed
crime.
on the order paper. Noted. Thank you, honourable members. I now move over to Honourable Makamba Botia.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that it is now almost 2 years since the brutal murder of Uinene Mpotyana, a first-year UCT student who was raped and killed in an inhuman manner. Her death and that of many others who perished under similar circumstances remains a constant reminder that gender-based violence is an evil pandemic which we should all strive to defeat. As a broader society, we have allowed this evil deed to entrench itself and form part of our everyday lives for so long without any real action to stop it. It is now time to unite and join hands in fighting for the freedom and safety of our women and daughters. We have put our faith in public institutions and the legal systems of this country for so long and watched as they failed us as women. More needs to be done, and it should all start with changing behavior from men. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections? Agreed to. I now move on to Honourable Nkondlo. Okay. Honourable Sayed.
The Speaker, I think she's having a technical problem. She did send a message.
Give her a little bit of an opportunity later. I will then move over to Honourable Keho.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice to condemn the move by the Western Cape Provincial Human Settlement Minister for celebrating a so-called decline in the land occupation within the province, rather than provide residents with land and housing opportunities. The minister has made it his strategy to cut his allocated housing budget, build few houses and blame everything on land occupiers. The residents of Danun, Kosovo, and many other informal settlements remain in congested areas because of provincial minister who promised to move them by July 2021. The minister must do an honorable thing and resign his post, as he knows himself that he has failed. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any motions? There are objections to the motion being moved without notice. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognize Honourable Clerco again. Honourable Clerco, you've got a few, so if you can just go on to the next one.
Sure. Thanks, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House note the quarterly labor force survey of the second quarter of 2021 released on the 24th of August by Statistics SA. According to the statistics, the number of unemployed people and discouraged work seekers have increased to 7.8 million and 3.3 million respectively. In percentage terms, the South African unemployment has reached 34.4%, which is the highest unemployment rate recorded since SA started collecting quarterly labor force surveys in 2008. This grim picture portrayed by these stats is a constant reminder of structural crisis created by colonial and apartheid regimes. The majority of Black people, especially women, continue to be discriminated from spheres of economic participation even this day, whilst our youth remain greatly disempowered with little to no economic opportunities as land and primary resources continue to be held by minority white population. I so move, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion be moved without notice? There are objections. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognize Honourable Makamba Botia.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House condemns the increase in criminal activities within the Western Cape public schools, where members of school governing bodies and staff continues to misappropriate and mismanage school funds. These funds form part of the resources which should enable schools to run better and respond to the needs of pupils. Stealing of school resources by adults amounts to robbing school children of their education and a better future. The majority of learners in public schools come from poor backgrounds and rely on these resources to equip themselves so that they can progress to tertiary institutions and later endeavor in various career streams. Western Cape Education Department requires a better leadership which will be proactive when it comes to tackling commercial crimes in our schools. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion be moved without notice?
Yes. Object.
There are objections. There are objections. The motion will be printed on the order paper. Honourable Lecker, I do recognize you, but I'll start with you again when I'm done with the list. I now recognize Honourable Karma.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. On behalf of the ANC, I move that the House notes and as a matter of principle support the calls of the ANC to have Mark Boucher removed as the head coach of the South African national cricket team by Cricket South Africa. South African democracy is built on the principles of non-racialism. Mark Boucher is on record to have admitted to the racial acts he has committed as a player, and he does not deserve to be part of South Africa's cricket team that will represent this rainbow nation with an ugly past. As the very same inquiry into racism in this sport is still ongoing, with disturbing revelations of how other South Africans have had to endure racism in this beautiful sport under the democratic dispensation, and so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion be moved without notice?
Object.
There are objections. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I now recognize Honourable Makamba Botia.
Thank you, Speaker. I move without notice to pledge the EFF support to the public service workers who protested outside the Western Cape Provincial Legislature on the 25th of August 2021, demanding salary increases and better employment. Our support also goes to community healthcare workers who have worked hard since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic and continue to do so even when the Provincial Department of Health refused to absorb and allocate them permanent positions. Their plight is that of the proletariat worker who continue to be let down by the system, which alienate themselves from themselves deliberately, so as they can produce for others in exchange for little to no pay. We will continue to support these workers as the EFF with the promise that the victory is certain, even in the face of the oppression. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice?
Yes.
There are objections. The motion will be printed on the order paper. Honourable Sayed. Are you done? You've got a few written here. Okay. Then I recognise Honourable Nkondlo. Honourable Nkondlo, are you still stuck? I'm then going to move over to Honourable Lecker.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. My apologies for the problem I encountered earlier on. I move without notice that the House congratulates former Cabinet Minister, anti-apartheid stalwart and gender activist Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula, who is the newly elected 7th Speaker of our Democratic National Assembly. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice?
Yes, absolutely.
Object.
That's great.
The motion will be printed on the order paper. Honourable Said, can I just confirm, I've got 3 more here of yours, no more? Okay, those are done. And then I recognise one more chance for Honourable Nkondlo. Your chance is now, or we shall close the session. No, going, gone. That concludes motions without notice. Thank you, honourable members. That concludes the business for the day. The Secretary will now end the meeting and all the members will be exited from the sitting. The House is adjourned.
Thank you.